Welcome, everyone, to the 21st One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace. It's Tuesday, December 12th, 2017. And my name's Rick Cranman. I'll be your host today. We'll be speaking with, Mr. Kesh, possibly later, but definitely Caroline. Caroline Kesh will be here with us. And we'll continue on with our discussions on world peace and other topics that come up under this workshop. Okay, I think we're ready to begin for today. Caroline, are you there?
Yes, Rick. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As Mr. Kesh says, we have to cover all the timelines around the world. Some are in warm areas, some are in cold areas, some have a cup of tea, and some have an iced tea. So that's the difference on this planet, which is beautiful. You can actually
What
have the
about
free.
what about our
Yeah.
friends off planet? What do we say to them? Are they drinking tea, I wonder?
I think not. As Mr. Kesh has explained, we are the ones on the planet which are consuming. So I I would I would think no.
I bet they have
But you never,
other ways of enjoying themselves nevertheless. I'm
who
sure that I'm
knows?
sure that joy is important in those realms too.
Yeah. And not only that, maybe one day we can allow them to have a taste of a cup of tea. But the
Some
problem
of us are
is,
drink. Some of us are drinking mate.
I still have to make mine. I haven't had time yet to make my coffee. So when it gets a little bit busier and I can have 5 minutes, then I will make my latte macchiato. But as Mr. Kesh says, actually, he explained to me. He uh, he said we are consuming, even breathing air, and that's already energy. So we are already consuming. So this is the condition of this planet. So we might be able in the very near future to learn from Mr. Kesh the path how to, without consuming, but to work through the field strength. And then finally, most probably, as we are all wishing, we might be free of being called very strange people. We consume everything because this is the way we know. This is more or less one of the paths we know how to consume. And the whole environment on this planet is using this kind of method of taking the energy which is not sufficient enough, as Mr. Kish has said so many times. Because if it would have been available enough, we would have not gone on the path that we are today on. But it is good that the knowledge is here and the teachings will start opening up the different ways how we can change. But as Mr. Kesh has explained as well, with those changes come other changes. It's like the more you give, the more you receive. I think it all works in the same kind of principle. So maybe we, through our expression of our emotion, we might transfer the knowledge of how a cup of tea or how a cup of coffee or how a beer or whatever we, as a pleasure we're enjoying now, maybe we can transfer it that they don't need to drink it or consume it, but through our field strength of thinking, that we might get that how it really tastes, how it really looks, the shape, the form, the smell, the sensation, the touch, everything which goes with it, and then the reaction, and this is all in our memories. So maybe, as Rick says, we might be able to share it on that level. What do you think, Rick?
Yes, that sounds good to me. As Ursula says in the chat, plasma is nutrition, the highest. That's interesting.
It
When we learn.
contains everything. If you go back to the teaching, what Mehen is explaining is that the field strength contains everything. So everything is everywhere. It's just that we are extracting it the wrong way. Either way we are looking at it, we are not eating, not breathing, not tasting, not digesting. We do just the opposite. So most probably this path with all this knowledge will go back to the way we should be, or to be the light and to be able to absorb the light, that is the completion that we are all seeking for. And we're all very eager learning where to find the doors to that little bit more knowledge to adjust. And a lot of knowledge seekers have started really going into more depth through the fields and understanding that they are reducing their food intake, they're reducing their water intake. So there are changes on the path. So we see a lot of changes very slowly, and then some people can explain it better in the field strength. And everyone who has had Magra systems or the star formation or the Ganses, they say, and they all give us a feedback that something is changing. The environment in the house is changing. Everybody is calming down. Everybody is more cheerful. There is not such a high level of stress presence. And I think if people could come with more feedback on that level, it would be brilliant, because then it will kick more people to start trying and see what they receive from the field strength. And we have a knowledge seeker, which we all had a few weeks ago, quite a few weeks ago, who has responded to the call of Dominica, and he's back home. I do not know when he will be able to join us. He has some documents and he has some pictures, loads of pictures. He says he has loads of video information, but I just don't know when he's going to pop up to come and share with us.
He's
here
with
now.
us. Mm-hmm.
He's present.
I'm not sure if he's ready, but he's here.
If he can let us know when he's ready, it would be nice to start to see what he has achieved and the changes.
I hear the voice. Hello, Tom, is that you?
That is me.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi, welcome, Tom.
Thank you. I'm back here in Mexico and I've got my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee and it's freezing. So I'm trying to readjust to the temperature. But it's nice to be back home. I've come out of the tropical environment where it was roasting hot and humid, and now I'm high on a plateau in Mexico somewhere and it's freezing, but it's quite nice. Sunny and cold. So yeah, I'm back home and it's nice to be home. Wow, what a trip. Thanks for helping me to go out there and help those guys. It was really quite amazing. Sorry, while I'm sipping my coffee.
Buddy, I'm going to make my coffee because I'm going to allow you to start sharing all your or everything from your beautiful journey, put it this way.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was very it wasn't easy, I'll put it like that. It was a difficult trip from start to finish, and there were some moments there where it was lovely and there were some moments where it was really quite depressing. And I don't know if folks listening know, but Dominica's a place I lived for, I think it was about 13 years. So it's actually more my home than England. I left England many, many years ago and searched for sunnier pastures, let's say. And so I ended up in Dominica. And so it very much became my home. It very much became a part of me. And so I have a strong, strong connection with the place and the people. And so it was crazy going back there and witnessing the place basically having been, it was in ruins. It's the only way I can really describe it. And it's a little island that's mostly rainforest, and it's known as the Nature Isle of the Caribbean. It's pristine rainforest, and 365 rivers is its marketing tag. I don't know if that's actually true, but basically they say there's 360, and that was to the country's detriment. Actually, it's an amazing place, but basically this it was Hurricane Maria that passed over Dominica, and the eye of the hurricane went straight over, and it's an island that's only what can I say? It's probably 30 miles across. So the eye basically went straight across the island, and the eye of the storm was actually bigger than that, I think. So there was no place on the island that didn't get touched by the hurricane. So it was basically devastated. I was shocked when I landed. We flew in, and I could just see that the place had turned from green to grey, and it was weird. It was surreal. So the little journey from the top end of the island to the bottom was shocking. It was like, because you're driving through rainforest, there are tiny little villages dotted here and there, but they really are tiny. There's like a couple of hundred people probably in each village. And it was just in ruins. It was like, the only thing I could liken it to is walking around. We've all watched these movies where humans used to meet on the battlefield, and they used to basically massacre one another. And then at the end of this battle, you would see that one had won and one had lost, and there were just scattered corpses everywhere. And the trees, basically, to me, it felt like I was walking through a battlefield. And the poor trees and I feel for the people. Being a human, I felt for the people, but the nature was just devastated, and it was shocking. It was like, it was really, really hard hit to my soul to see the level of devastation. And the trees that were left standing were, you saw some of the video, I think, right, already, that the trees that were left standing were leafless and grey, and the ones that were on the ground were just scattered in every direction. It was quite bizarre. There was no pattern to the way in which the wind had blown everything down. They were just like a pile. If you imagine a pile of matchsticks, if you emptied a matchbox and just dumped them out, it looked like that. And yeah, there you go. Thanks, Rick. You can see there's not a tree left on the not a leaf left on the trees there. And so for me, that was awful, because I have a really strong connection to the nature there, and it was just shocking. So basically, I arrived down there, arrived on the island, drove down to the south, more the south of the island, and could start to see the devastation that had happened in the capital too. And there are some, I haven't got photos in front of me at the moment, but there are some absolutely amazing pictures of the capital there, which basically, as I said, it's got so many rivers in this little tiny island, and the island just basically pops out of the water of the Caribbean. It's got the Caribbean Sea on one side and the Atlantic on the other, and it's a volcanic island, so it just pops out of the sea and goes straight up with its mountains. And it's covered in rivers. So basically everywhere that there's a river or a tiny little stream or any little water source just turned into a raging ocean of, I don't know, power and force, and anything that was close to those rivers and what have you just basically got destroyed or washed down into the sea. And that basically was the same for if there were people living in ravine. Like a lot of people tend to live close to river and close to the sea. If you look at the layout of the island and where it's populated, it's all around the edges, by the ocean basically, and then the folks who live inland tend to gravitate to where the rivers are because the water being the life. And so it was awful to see that anyone who was living close to the ocean or the rivers, which is just about everywhere, got ruined. And there, as you start to talk to the people, you get an idea that everybody went through this hellish scenario. And for those who don't know, it was a Category 5 hurricane. And for those who know about this kind of thing, basically the categories stop at 5. But if there were a category to correlate to the wind speeds, it would have been a Category 7. They were over 200 miles an hour. So that was just devastating. So basically the wind was devastating everything that wasn't close to the water. And then anywhere that the water was, devastated it where it was next to it. And so it's the water that does the most damage. They had a hurricane in '79, which was Hurricane David, and that's kind of legendary on the island. People are always talking about that and who experienced Hurricane David. And they say that this one was much worse because it had a much larger.
Imagine.
They had a much larger volume of water. And so basically that down in the capital, when I arrived there, they've got quite a large river that runs straight through the capital, and that broke its banks. They do all this. There's a lot of they try and do the engineering to make, to develop the place. And I guess it's the same in a lot of these little islands, and they'll put bridges here and there. And then when you receive this kind of heavy weather, they're always put to the test, and basically they failed. And they've engineered a lot of these bridges way too low to the water line. And so you start getting, what happens in Dominica is you've got all the trees get blown down in the hurricane, and then inevitably they reach the where the ravines and rivers are, and then they get washed down, and everything comes down to the ocean. And the capital is next to the ocean. So basically, the river came down with a whole forest running in it and huge boulders, and it was really something to see. And that just devastated the capital. So basically, all these bridges just got dammed up, and then the water burst its banks, and you had the capital city just basically went underwater and was filled with debris and sand and trees. So you had folks scrambling for their lives, trying to survive this crazy bit of weather. And there are so many amazing stories from the people there, that just about everybody experienced something which was life-changing, for them. Even just sitting and listening to the radio was they had one station that was up and running, and people were telling their stories in that, and they were horrifying. They were just like, imagine being in your house and being somewhere close to a river, and basically these people were braced for a Category 2 hurricane, which they all know will cause damage, but they weren't braced for the level that this hurricane came in at. And basically it jumped from a hurricane, from a category 2 up to a category, what would have been 7 in moments. So people were sitting in their homes waiting for a little hurricane, which they were expecting to not do too much damage. And then suddenly they were faced with this monster. And it really was a monster. And when you speak to these people, and when you see, I mean, you're looking at the images there of my little wooden shack that I used to live in. That's high up in the mountains. But basically, it was bizarre. When you look at the damage, and I'll put some pictures up when I can. I don't have them in front of me right now, but the only thing I can liken it to is imagine a 200-meter tall monster running around an island and just ripping out roofs, tearing up all the structures, and chewing them up and spitting them back out. The whole place just looked like that. It looked like it had had a monster, a Godzilla, run through the place and just devastate it. And so there's a lot of trauma. The people are pretty traumatized, and every time it starts raining now, everyone's in fear. And I suspect this is going to last for quite a long time. Now, Dominicans are pretty courageous people because they're quite used to this heavy weather and hard life and striving and dealing with the elements and stuff. But it really was like having a beast come through there and just destroying it at will. And so it's a bit of a weird scenario now. It's like I can liken it to a sort of a war zone, in that food supplies have gone right down to the basics. Stores are starting to open and things are coming. Even in the month that I was there, I could see a change, and things are starting to creep back to, it's not normality, but a certain level of normality. But it really reminded me of like being what people would experience in a war zone. Everything goes back to basics. There's no energy on the island yet. There's no light. In the capital, they're starting to get a few little places that they've restored the light. Hence making communications really difficult. I had to come down to one hotel that had light, and we were able to get a Wi-Fi signal, but it was really quite tricky to get online. And I could communicate through my cell phone, which I could put like a little data plan on it and then basically send messages. But getting online and having Wi-Fi was really tricky. So the whole island's in darkness. Everyone's doing whatever they're doing by candlelight now, and most of the island's without plumbed water. So people they've gone back to basics, basically. And what's quite interesting is where we were living, or where my mother was living, or is living, up in the mountains. We've created this little place that's very, very nice, but it's very basic. We don't have electricity up there. We don't have plumbed running water. And so she's really not feeling the pinch up there, and life really hasn't changed for her. So that was a bit like that, the little sanctuary that we were going back to each day. We would trek out a little bit and try and get around and try and speak to people, and we were doing workshops and stuff, sharing what we know about the plasma, and we just couldn't wait to get back. Every day it was like we just couldn't wait to get back home, where things were normal as they always were. And the images there that you're looking at, that's our home. And I guess this is where the subject's going to go to now, is that this place was relatively untouched, and we just couldn't wait to get back there every day, because it would just take your energy being around the island. You would go out and you would just step out and try and get around the island and stuff. And it was a real drain on you. It was just walking or driving from A to B was emotionally really, really, really draining, and took a lot of energy. And that's what really surprised me, because I feel like I'm quite a strong person and I can deal with whatever comes in front of me. And I seeing horror and seeing chaos and whatever doesn't usually affect me too much. I can work through it. But actually there, it was like we would get home and just slump into our chairs and say, wow, that took so much energy. Just witnessing the struggle that's going on, just witnessing people having to walk for miles to get water, getting back home, and everybody's living under tarpaulins, basically. I think it was like 90 or 95% of the homes on the island lost their roofs or had roofs damaged, which you could say, all right, well, they've still got their homes. But the reality of that, when you're living in a tropical island, means now that every time it rains, you're in chaos. You've got everything inside your home wetting, and tarpaulins are tarpaulins. They're not, it's not the perfect covering, so you do end up getting wet under it. And you can just see how, regardless of being wealthy or being poor, it's like a leveler. The land has been leveled and everybody's there more or less dealing with the same stuff now, which is just a drag. It's a drain. It's a struggle. And so luckily my mum's place still had the roof intact and all the rest, and was still relatively untouched. So we felt a bit spoiled. You would go out and you would talk to people, and we would see people we know, and basically the only conversation there on the island is how are you? What happened to you? Are you okay? How are you coping? And people would ask us, and I started to get a little bit embarrassed about saying, well, actually, yeah, we're fine, we're great, everything's nice, and the garden's fine, and the home's fine, because basically they'll just look at you like, okay, well, we're happy for you, that's great, but we're living in some kind of a hell, So it was really, really, what can I say? It was interesting, but it was really quite, it took a lot of energy. I have friends that have,
Tom,
hi, yeah.
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I got a question. When you saw the change on their face, did you ever went into the length of explaining why your house was untouched?
Depending on the person. Some people are already aware that I'm working with plasma and so on, and I made it known that I was coming back to do teaching for it and all that kind of thing. And as conversations expanded, I would say, and the people I was teaching as well, we would go into it. But
what was their reaction then? Or how was their emotional?
To be honest, Carolina, most folks are not ready to receive that kind of information, and they don't know where to go with it. Okay, let's say the conversation goes, hi, how are you? I'm great. What happened to you? Nothing. The house is fine. The garden's fine. Wow. And if they were the type of people I would go into the conversation about the plasma with them, they get their heads around the fact that plasma can be something that can help us day to day and whatever. But when you start to say that potentially has a kind of a force field effect, they're not ready for that information, and they'll look at you funny and and generally speaking, people are not ready for that yet, and I wish they were. And I'd love to be able to tell you that they all say, great, now can we do it? But generally people back off at the moment you say things like that and think that you're a bit strange and you're a bit out there. They think I'm a bit out there already, so it's not a problem for me having these chats, and I don't mind going there with folks. But to be honest, humanity's got a long way to go yet before they can start to see that these things are a reality. And
how many people would you say would That you can like igniting the spark of looking at things different in your whole journey. How many people that you can say I touched something, not necessarily that they have to start doing things or getting involved, but that you could notice there was a spark of change? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's very difficult to say. Not so many.
There was quite a few, Tom, in the pictures you showed that were using the plasma technology, and you did some workshops as well, correct?
Yeah, right. I mean, to be honest, we're sitting here. Most of us who are listening to this or involved in what we're doing here, to us, we've become normalized to this being how we live and what we do, and so for us, it doesn't seem like a really out there thing. But most folks, just it's so out there. And when I say out there, I mean it's so it's such a peculiar concept, because I think most people's train of thought is, well, why then, if you're saying that using plasma you can create like a safety net over yourself, or a little oasis dome, whatever. I think their train of thought is, then why is everyone not living like that already? Why, if this is a reality, then why does humanity not know about this? And why is a guy like you, me, a normal guy on the street, the guy that's telling it to them? Why have they not heard about this? Why is this not something that's on the news? Why is this not something that is normal to everybody? And I think that's the train of thought, is like, I think most people would just watch me and say, well, who is this guy to deliver this information? You know? And at that point, I don't push. I just, if I can see that they're receptive to it, I will give them more, and I will gladly, and kind of in a kind of a way, that's a lot of the teaching we were doing out there was off the cuff, and folks who did respond well to it, I would almost do impromptu workshops with folks all over the place. So we were organizing workshops and doing things here and there with groups, but there was quite a lot of just on the spot sitting down. I would open up my notebook and start, doing little off the cuff teachings with people. And yes, people respond well to it. But basically, the people who have an expanded consciousness are the ones who can handle that information. And when I say an expanded consciousness, I mean people who realize that, there is more to life than the physicality that we live in, and that there are many, many layers that we don't see perhaps with our limited vision, that there's much more out there than what we can see. And the people with the expanded consciousness are very receptive to this stuff. And as we can see in the plasma community, that tends to be the type of people who are working with this stuff, are people who are a little bit open to these new ideas already. But it's my opinion that, we're in the 1% at the moment, and there's a 99% out there who are still quite limited in their perception of reality and what possibilities are. People tend to think, and this is just my experience, and someone else can maybe add more to this and persuade me otherwise, but people tend to think that everything we have here on Earth is there already, and it isn't going to get any better, and it isn't going to, we've expanded to our fullest already, and that there isn't much room for more expansion. So when someone like me, who's an ordinary Joe on the street, comes up and starts giving new information, for a lot of people, it's just like, yeah, right. If we hear something like this, it's coming to us on the news from some well-educated man. It's not going to come from some guy on the street, So it's a weird juxtaposition where people are, in my honest opinion, Carolina, there's a lot of work to do with folks to open the consciousness and create the fertile ground on which it can be normalized, the work that we're doing. And we're doing it, you know, me going and showing folks that, well, have a look. Actually, Dominicans were much more receptive to the idea of being protected by something like this plasma than let's say the foreigners that lived on the island. For them, it was much more of a struggle to think about this stuff than it was for Dominicans, because Dominicans are much more in their hearts and they're much more people of the earth, you know.
And how would you compare it with your experience in Mexico?
I've not been to, because I'm not totally au fait with the Spanish language yet, so I'm not able to really get out into the community and do the teaching. A lot of the work I'm doing here in Mexico is online, so I'm not so out there with the people. But the folks that I have shown about the plasma technology and stuff are receptive to they're people that are in their hearts again, and that it comes back to like that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't really like using the term third world, but you get what I'm saying if I say third world. And these people tend to be more receptive to it than the people in the quote unquote first world. And
what if we use the term not brainwashed, not structured?
Yes, exactly. Not programmed.
Not programmed.
Yeah.
Because they are still in their innocence.
Yes, exactly.
And their innocence opens the heart much faster.
Exactly.
They
and
do not pre-chew or after-chew everything you try to. It's more the natural way of showing.
Yeah, and we in the West tend to overanalyze everything. And so when I give a workshop to quote unquote Westerners, there will be every pointer that you make will need dissecting and breaking down into its. Everything would need to be completely understood and completely broken up into. We're much more methodical in our thinking rather than like the images you're seeing right now from the one of the workshops that I gave there. And these guys didn't need to do that dissection of every piece of information. They just absorbed it, and then their brain or their hearts were taking them to the place of understanding where they could sort of apply it into their reality. And so they would more be thinking, the train of thought would more be like, wow, I can apply this to here and here and here, rather than questioning that information and saying, well, is this valid? And I've been taught this before now, and this is contradicting what I've been taught. So there's a big question mark hanging over whether this is truth or not. These guys didn't do that. They were just open to it and just much more responsive to the information, because they haven't got that pre-programmed thing, and that is a blessing. If you've to me, not going to school is a blessing, you know. But so yeah, it's kind of it's ever frustrating working with plasma, and people are not always totally open to it, but it is getting easier, and it's a process, and it is quite a long process. And you'll know, Carolina, because you've been doing this for however many years, and I'm sure you've gone through the struggles of dealing with people being skeptical about what you're saying and being, closed-minded about it, and the closed-mindedness about it all is a barrier that takes quite a lot to dissolve and break through. And I don't know, maybe that's just my experience. I see lots of people around the world doing workshops, and I see lots of people responding well to it. So it is getting easier, and that's because now we've got a volume of, let's say, testimonials and stuff where people are trying it and doing it, and actually everybody more or less is saying the same thing, like, oh yeah, I've had this experience since I've been doing it, and it lines up with the same experience everyone else is having. So it's getting easier, But at the same time, I still say we're probably in the 1% or the 2%. I don't know. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. I mean, I know there's a bunch of stuff that they're questions that have come into my mind when I've been standing at home looking at why our place was relatively untouched, and trying to understand. I think it's a conversation I'd quite like to have, so maybe we could go there now. Is why was our place relative?
What would you like to know exactly?
Well, when I saw,
I thought you already figured that one out by yourself.
I have figured it out. And
so why don't you come and explain it?
Let's just say I have my theories. I haven't figured it out. I'm sure Mr. Kesh can add a lot to this, but I have my theories. And
why theory? You put it into practice.
Yeah. Well, let's. In the little video that I popped up there in the golden age of GANs, it was cautious, as you've probably seen, and it was like, well, okay, let's just look at this as data, because at the moment it's data, and until you start having hundreds of people coming forward and saying the same thing, then in that scientific world where everything needs to be tested and double blind tested and all the rest of it, then it's not a reality until you've got to that point. So I know what I think about it, but it is just data at this point, right? Because there's not many people that have experienced this. So I think let's hope that this is the start point where people can start maybe applying plasma, and let's watch it and see. But for me, how I see this is that I'm a person that's very practical with my hands. I'm not a theory person, I'm a practical person. So with our place in Dominica, we more or less did every part of it ourselves. When we got the piece of land and we became the guardians of that land, it was an acre and a quarter of land, and it was basically scrub land. I don't know what you would say. It was like a blank piece of paper. It was, at one point in time, the land had been worked by a few farmers, and but it was basically a blank sheet of paper for us to go in there and do what we want to do. So we've basically done every part of it in there. We've done it with our own hands. And to me, the more I sat and looked at why perhaps we weren't affected by the hurricane, was that, and looking at this through the lens of studying plasma, my DNA is firmly rooted into that land. I mean, the phrase blood, sweat and tears comes to mind, right? Where my blood is in that land, my sweat, and yet my tears too. And so I know that my DNA is firmly rooted into that area. Every part of that house that you're looking at there has got me and my family's work into it. I mean, you see this large pole. If you look at that image there, this large pole there, I mean, I've stood with a chisel in my hand, chiseling off for 2 days, making it round, making it smooth. Every part of that, every single aspect of that house, we've worked through it. I've sweat over it. So the point I'm making here is that I think when you very much involve yourself in your surroundings, like these days we have a tendency to just buy a house, move into that house and live there. In the West, again, there is that tendency to be removed from our home, and we're not a part of it, and we didn't build it, and we didn't create it. We weren't part of the process of it. So for me, it's vital that you've passed your DNA, your amino acids, let's say, that you have dropped into that land by touching those plants, by building that house, you've got a connection already. And we all know, those of us that are looking at plasma and studying that stuff know that our DNA, our connection with the plasma we make creates the stronger field interaction. It creates the connection between the plasma and us. So what I can say I did there was we created this place, we've planted the plants, and then what I've done is we've gone around and we've implemented plasma into that place. So that pink wall you're looking at there has got plasma in the paint. Those plants that you're looking at there have all been sprayed. Like when I was living there, I literally got a backpack sprayer on my back, and we were spraying the whole garden with CO2, zinc oxide, plasma, liquid plasma. And so everything got sprayed. And everything, there are devices there. I built, I made like what I would call organic plasma devices that are not actually anything that you would plug into anywhere. They're devices that I created specifically to provide protection. And my intent at the point of creating those devices was to act as a protection for us. And I programmed them with that intent. And so for me, as I observed the garden, the house, the surroundings, for me, the plasma, which very much contains my DNA because I made it, acts as a kind of amplifier for that intent. And so it's got the whole place has very much got a strong connection. I don't know if I'm articulating this very well, but the connection between me or my family and the land is made. The plasma has kind of amplified that, or what other word can I find? Strengthened the connection. And so to me, even though I wasn't there when the hurricane happened, I was very much aware that there was a hurricane coming. And me and my mum have this funny, and always have had this funny saying of, anytime that anyone's in some kind of a pressure situation and we're not there, we ask that the other puts us in a pink bubble. And it's just a phrase that we use, and I don't know where it's arrived from, but basically we would say, like, if I'm in a communication with my mother and we know there's a hurricane coming, she would say, put me in a pink bubble. I say, I've got you in a pink bubble. And that is the visualization that we would create. And I think that's pretty much what happens when the plasma is present. You are able to create that. It might not be pink, but you're able to create that bubble where you can put a kind of a protection over yourselves. And it was really, really weird. I've got a few pictures, but when you think about 200-mile-an-hour winds passing through the place, and it's not that those winds didn't pass through our garden, they did. And there are some parts of the garden that just got ripped apart and ravaged. If you can see that image there on that inner circle there, that was pretty much protected. There wasn't very much damage inside there. But what my mum pointed out and wanted to say was that it seems as though it's not just that there is this protective dome of which everything within it is not going to get harmed. Because there is that DNA connection, it's almost like the parts of what is inside that inner ring that you care the most about were protected. The parts that maybe you didn't care about, like if you can see on that image there are two sheds, which are the little blue squares with the little kind of cracked lines around them. Those two sheds one was my home, the one at the top was my shack, and Rick, if you can go back to the image, yeah, that one. So if that one at the top there, where your marker is, was where I was living, and the one lower down was more or less, it was another shack, but it was a space that we used to live and have our things around there. And they'd become like a burden to my mother. It was a pain for her to have to look after them. And as she was getting a bit older, it became like they were a bit of a burden to her. And the one that's on the inner ring, I don't know if you can see there's a square on the inner ring. That one there was fine. That one is still very functional to my mother. That's more or less like the storeroom and what have you. And the same could be said for the trees. There were a couple of trees on that inner ring that got blown down. And when my mother analysed it, it was like, well, actually, those trees were the ones that I realised I'd planted in the wrong place, and they were going to actually cause a problem at some point in time. And the more we sat and broke it down and looked at it, it was like we could see that almost there was like a conscious connection between the things for her. What my mum told me is, because she's the one that's basically living there now, was what was really important to me was my flowers. My flowers keep my spirit up. My flowers are very important to me, which might seem strange to some people when you've got physical structures there that cost money to build and all that kind of thing. But more importantly were the flowers. There were a couple of trees on that inner ring that were very important to her. And the more we analysed it, it was like you could see that there's a connection between what you, as the person who is the guardian of that area, would want to see protected, and the things that to you maybe were a burden or weren't correct in any way, they didn't get protected. So it isn't quite the case that you have a dome of which everything will be protected. It's more a case of the things you care for, let's say. So that to me is really, really, really interesting, because that's where you start to see, like I view, and I'm pretty much sure that most people that are working with plasma view the plasma as as consciousness, as a living, conscious, I don't know if being is the right word, but it's consciousness. It has a consciousness. And to me, that's a wonderful example of that consciousness connecting through us, the guardians of that land, the plasma, and it responding to that condition, which was in that case the hurricane. But yeah, like I say, it was really odd going and looking at, like, for me, it was interesting on an engineering point of view, going and walking around the house and seeing why the roof was still on. And you know, the house isn't perfect, and it was trial and error, a lot of that for me. And these days I do know how to build, but back then it was more or less, let's just have a go and see if we can build a home. So I put a roof on the place, and to me it wasn't perfectly done, and it wouldn't have surprised me if my mother had said, "Oh, the roof's blown off." So I was going and looking at it, and it was weird because there are points where I haven't roofed it perfectly, and you know, the galvanized roof sheets maybe were hanging out, you know, there was a bit more overhang than you would want in a perfectly roofed home. And you can see when a hurricane passes over, the wind wants to grab under all these edges. So when you look at all these homes that lost their roof, what's happened is the wind just basically catches under any point where it can get a grip, and then it just rips it up and off. So our home there has plenty of these places. And if some places, I wish I had a couple of photos to show you now, but I don't have them with me. But it's almost like the wind has gone in as if it had teeth, and it's just clawed out the roof sheets from the center, like not even from the edges. It's just like it's bitten it and ripped it out. And our roof, not even, as much as I could find, was like like maybe a half inch or an inch of the galvanized sort of slightly raised, on one tiny little corner of one of the joints. Everything else was just where it was supposed to be. So it was bizarre when you can see that there are trees that have been ripped out of the ground, and then a few meters away, the galvanizer is not even raised or bent or anything. You really start to see that, yes, there is, it's kind of defied the laws of physics, I guess. And it's a very odd thing to watch, and it's really quite weird. But if you can get your head around that the plasma has that ability to create that little protection over it, then I don't know if Mr. Kesh is around and can comment on that, about the actual physics of how something that is a field energy can. But okay, here's where
if I may ask you,
yeah,
you just broke it all down. That when you went with your mom step by step through what you have seen and witnessed in your own garden on such a huge terrain. So wherever you or your mom or together were connected in your field strength of caring, loving, and giving, it has stayed untouched.
yes.
So even the areas that you might have not applied GANs, they still were in your protection field because of your love and your care.
Yes.
So then there is no magic, is there?
No,
That's the truth. That's the truth. No, I don't say that you use the word magic. I'm trying to say that what Mr. Kesh has been teaching, the more you give, the more you receive. And if you're giving unconditionally, as you are giving me a layout of how you care for flowers, your mom cares for trees, and then she knew, or she hesitates, or by intuition or by field strength, she knew that certain trees were in a wrong position, but everything that was perfectly in balance with your emotion and her emotion, it all has stayed intact. It hasn't moved. So the teaching that Mr. Kesh has been given over the years is when you give and you care and you love unconditionally, then you see how it has come as a return, and it has manifested itself, and it's still not easy for you to be able to accept this natural way of giving and receiving.
Well, it transfers into physical. I mean, I accept it, and I live like that. And I think when people start to open their consciousness, that you will experience this on a daily basis. And like a hurricane passing over it and you being untouched is like the ultimate confirmation of this, right? You can't get a bigger example of that. Like that one is quite an eye opener. But I and many other people live on a day-to-day basis where we are in that correct state, and therefore we've all heard that term, like conscious creation, the creating your own environment, creating your own what you want to happen. And to a point, a lot of us live like that, but maybe don't realize the strength of it. I try and live like that, and I now my life works like that. Day to day, I know I'm going to meet the people I need to meet. I know I'm going to experience the things I need to experience. And it's not black and white, like I want the Ferrari, there's the Ferrari. It's more that you get yourself in that state, that perfect state of giving and receiving, and you will get it. And even the bad stuff, the perception of, well, I didn't want that. Why did that come? You start to have the skill, the tools to make a fast analysis of why did that happen to me. And at that point, you get the realization and the learning that I needed that. I needed that bad experience for me to learn something. And so when you start living like that, that's why it's not a surprise to me to see all this stuff. I mean, I'm here chatting about it like I can't believe this happened, but actually I get it. I get why it happened. The physics for me is challenging because
That's why I said you are the best candidate if you understood. And that was my first wording. I said, I hope he understood what he has shown and sent to us. And then I had the same feeling when I sent it to Rick. I said, I hope Rick will see what he has received, because this is amazing. But the totality of the teaching is that if you are the creator, as Mr. Kesh is giving in the teachings, and he has opened everything up to the level of the understanding that we can follow the pattern. If you are the creator, where is the creating starting? It is within your mind. So your mind gives the first indication, and then it goes outwards towards something. So it can go to a child, it can go to a flower, it can go to a tree, if we keep it just very simple, the way with what we have now in pictures, and your witness, and you've been there. So you already created this before this all happened. It's not that you instantly started creating a field. It was there in place, invisible, but it was present.
It's very much a process. And that's kind of why I say, I think to me, one of the most important points to, if people are trying to understand this, and myself, we're trying to understand this, is that we have to have that close connection with our reality for it to have that strength that it can tackle a hurricane, or it can tackle not getting run over by a bus, or it can, you've got to have that strong soul connection with what you're doing. And we tend to have a disconnect in this time. It's like you said, it's a lot of it's about the programming, and a lot of it's about the way that society is forming us in the West. We tend to have a disconnect from our lives. We tend not to be connected to our home or the things that surround us, or I mean, I'm speaking generally here. I know there are many, many, many people that get this and that live like this. I know, but I'm talking about humanity on the whole. But important is to have your hands in the earth, to be connected to the thing, to be a part of the process of doing the thing, and doing it with a deep soul connection to what you're doing, and understanding why you're doing it. You're creating a home, you're creating an environment that is very much a part of you. You are it, and it is you. And at that point, the field strength just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think you reach a certain point where, yes, you can tackle a hurricane. I had a friend contact me and said that in probably the previous workshop that Mr. Kesh had said something about, I didn't hear it, so I'm going by what she said, but basically the plasma doesn't last forever, and that it has its limitations. And she was quite disappointed by this, and was sort of saying to me, Tom, it doesn't, the plasma is not going to last forever. And my response to her was, well, remember that you are the plasma. And does your plasma finish? No, we've got those fields. We are that field strength. And so regardless of whether we're using plasma as a vehicle, and that's what I see plasma as, it's a kind of it's a vehicle for us to understand how to get our own mojo working. I don't know what the right word is, but think about back in the day, think about how the indigenous back in time have been able to get those fields flowing without realizing that's what they're doing. What is a rain dance? What is someone who is guiding a storm? What is it when the indigenous used to be able to play with these energies and control their environment? What is that? It's the same thing. We are using plasma as a tool, but what is it? What is it when somebody does a rain dance? What is that spinning movement? to me, you're just creating vortex. You're whipping up those magnetic gravitational fields, and you're creating that energy that you want. So if you're desperate for it to rain and you do your rain dance, well, that's what you're doing. You're doing the same thing. I mean, I think the plasma is like a way of amplifying that. I see spiraling. I get an image in my head when I'm trying to think about what happened here, about the hurricane passing and missing us. I see like vortex going up to a certain height, and I see that they're creating a shielding effect, and I see lots of them. And I think that's basically what you're doing back in the day, doing a rain dance, or doing, the folks that were able to guide storms away from them or whatever. It's
Tom,
the same thing. Yeah.
I think, to me, what you were just describing, I would call that the plasma. And I would call the stuff that you were calling plasma the GANs, or sometimes plasma water, or the water of the GANs, or something like that. And because I've noticed you use plasma quite a bit too, because it's like the plasma water, the GANs water is the plasma. But also plasma is the fields like you were just describing. And maybe if you were just to transfer the idea of plasma to include those fields as well as the fields within the plasma water and the GANs itself, and then it's like it becomes more all-inclusive then. And then when you talk to someone, you can include the fields that they feel, their feelings are more involved with the word plasma then, rather than the material stuff like the GANs, CO2 GANs or zinc oxide GANs and so on.
Yeah.
It's just something I was observing.
And in reality, our universe is, what is it? You'll probably know better than me, but 90-something% plasma, right?
The so-called scientists say it's up around 99.98% of the universe is considered to be in the plasma state of matter.
Right. So it's rather a generic term, really, isn't it, to use the term plasma?
It is. Mm-hmm.
But I see that all we're doing is manipulating is not such a nice word, but we're kind of manipulating everything that surrounds us. We're working with those energies, and there is a field interaction going on. There is an interaction between everything that is around us. If our universe is 98% plasma, then to me, what we're getting here is it's just a little visual of the possibility of what you can do when you start playing, and playing is probably not a good term either, but playing with those energies and understanding how to create balanced fields, because that's what I see is happening when you are able to deflect a hurricane. You've created an absolute balanced field where you're able to guide it as you want. You're creating that pink bubble that you're asking for. So it's understanding that this, to me, the GANs and the physical stuff that we're using that's wowing us at the moment. We're like, wow, it takes away our pain. Wow, it can do this, it can do that. Well, that's just the bridge. I've said it before, but that's the bridge into understanding that we are it, and we've got to start learning how to balance those fields constantly. And when you meet a balanced human, when you meet them, because they make you feel calm. They make you feel in a state of peace. And the plasma does that, but we don't need the plasma. The plasma is great. It's great to use it as a tool for us to understand it. And I work with the GANs every day, and I have it fully implemented into my life. And I believe that that's taught me the lesson that I know now, which is that ultimately it's a tool, but we are it. And so we've got to learn how to how to work with that plasma that is everything. Now that we know how to create a plasma, which to me is like creating life, as we've learned, it's like each plasma is a star, right? So we're creating universes all the time. We're creating, that is consciously creating our reality. And when you start to understand how to create those balanced fields, boom, life just becomes wonderful. You're in the right place. It's not to say nothing's ever. It's a bit of a trap, and just a second. Why I came into that? Why I put that video up and was so kind of tentative about.
On the left.
Sorry. Okay. Why I was tentative in that video and was a plasma oasis ? And let's call this data, is because you will have a lot of people now with their arms folded saying, okay, so nothing, so you're Superman, so nothing's going to ever happen to you. So, that kind of attitude is, we're now in a space, and I've already started to have a few attacks on me online, when you put something up like that. I didn't put it on my own page because I just know it's going to be too out there for some people, and you then put yourself in that position where it's like everyone's watching you. Okay, Tom's in his balanced fields and nothing can ever happen to Tom. Well, it's not like that. It's learning how. We're all babies and we're just learning how to walk. And so, those of us who starting to get our heads around the whole idea of creating what we need for us and feeding from what are those energies that surround us. We're babies still, and I don't want to start saying I'm in a bubble and nothing can happen to me, because I realize it can. And if it does, it's because I needed to learn something from it. I needed, if tomorrow I do have a hurricane come over and it does mash up my house, it's because I needed to learn something from it, and so it's a bit of a trap to start saying that here we are, we've got it worked out and that's it. It's a process. That's how I see it. It's like it's a process that we're moving through, and I do see that we're babies, and I do see that we are going to fall over a couple of times, and I don't mind falling. My whole life's been tripping over and bumbling around and finding my way. And I think for most humans, it's the same thing. Here we are in this very third dimension where you get bumped and scraped and whacked and cracked, and it's a learning process for us. And but I think it's a lovely way that we can. This is a nice example, and I think anyone who's learning and studying the plasma can just use this as a little template for what the possibilities are. Let's say, doesn't mean we're now invincible. It doesn't mean that nothing can happen to us now because we've learned how to do this. No, I don't see it like that at all. I think that we're very much, it's a process, let's say. So if anyone has any questions, I'm around and happy to answer, happy to chat.
Very good, Tom. Very interesting. I think it's true that if we get too proud sometimes in our technology, or saying that, oh, I've got a bubble that protects me, and that's at the exact moments when that banana peel just comes out of nowhere and slips itself underneath our feet. And usually I think if there are gods and angels, that's when they laugh at humanity. It's like every time we get a little bit too proud, there's something comes along that reminds us that to be humble in our ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Even someone, you take Houdini, the famous escape artist back in the old days. He bragged to everyone that he could take any punch to the solar plexus, and he strengthened himself. He is a very strong man, and he strengthened himself by having a very strong stomach area and so on. And he showed that when he prepared himself, he was able to take the strongest punch, basically. So how did Houdini die? He died from a punch to the stomach, because he wasn't prepared for it, and someone took him by surprise and just thought they could just go right up and smash him in the stomach because he had bragged about it, and he wasn't prepared for it, and he died of internal bleeding or whatever from being punched in the stomach. So
Yep.
you have to be sort of careful what you wish for in a way.
Yep. And
And
it's not it's not a perfect science for us. Those who have started doing the plasma. Like I know I'm out there. I send a lot of things to people around the world, and most people respond pretty positively to it. But there'll always be the one or two that just come back and say, "That's just nonsense. That's nothing. What is that? The thing you just sent is nothing. It didn't do anything. I'm still got my pain. I've still got," and it's the same thing, you know, like it's a trap to start saying, here we go, we've got the magic pill that can just, you know, because
well, you already mentioned about the magic pill, and the magic pill is us. And you had
exactly.
already made your intent for this oasis, you know, before you even ran around with your backpack and sprayed everything with the GANs and GANs water. But you did mention the key word, I think, that connects all of this, and that it strengthened your intention. That was the word you used. That it
Yeah.
made it stronger. It connected somehow the you in you and the it of the environment,
Yeah, the
and
physicality that's surrounding you.
yeah, and so it's a connector. It's a way of actually strengthening that connection, which is actually our beingness. The vibration between us and our environment is like that connection, and I think that's what gets strengthened through these materials. But if you think about it, you know, you might have what, a couple of kilograms of GANs in your backpack that you sprayed around the property or something. But meanwhile, you could be 100 kilograms of GANs inside the skin of your body that's running
Yep.
around with this intention behind it that's doing all this, and the a mental control function and all of these great attributes actually that the little
Yep.
backpack doesn't have. So we are the miracles, and the GANs is just a tool in our toolbox in a way to
Yep.
expand on that.
And people want everything. Humans tend to want everything quantifying. They want to know exactly. Like I've had so many people like say, "Can you explain us the exact distance of how far are the plasma?" I don't know. I don't know. It's you and your consciousness as to how far that can expand. You can expand out into the whole universe and have a connection to every part of this universe and the next one. Maybe I don't know. And that need
But
to want to quantify.
if I may add something, if you remember from Mr. Keshe's teaching, you are already a shining light right across all the universes.
Yep.
So whatever you add, you just increase your field strength of your light. So you are already there,
And
instant.
yes, and how was it, Tom, that you came up with this diagram then with, you know, you got some very exact lines here, and at the
I
same
paced it
time
out.
it's
I
well,
literally
but
I
you
literally
say it's an
walked where
inexact science, and yet you have these exact lines. So explain yourself there. How do you do that? Did you lay out like a guideline all around, and you could feel the fields, and there was a definite
there
Coulomb
was
barrier, or what? Tell us a little more scientifically what that's all
sure.
about.
Basically, there was a very visual line that you could see where things were intact, and on the other end of the line they weren't. And so I paced it out. What I could see, literally, where things were. Where the flowers were still standing, and then the other side of it, you could see that it was like it had been ravaged a lot more. So that was a visual that it was more like mine and my mother's, as we discussed it, we started walking around that area where that inner circle was, and sort of saying like, yeah, you can see it's kind of like it has got that area, but it's like I said before, more or less that area that you're looking at in that inner circle is the view. Okay, so if you look on the right, you'll see my mum there sitting in the porch, and as you look down, the line that you're able to see is where it's like the visual you have from sitting on that porch is where that line is. So I think probably time spent sitting on that porch, gazing out into the view, that is where that protective line goes, because that's where the eye has been looking at that area, and the eye cares the most for that area, and the eye so out where you've got the orange, the yellow band there, and then when you get into the wild garden area, that's actually out of the eye, the view. So to me, it was like the area that got protected and for my mum as well, as she was getting older, we used to keep the whole garden, like the whole of the garden was well kept. And as she's getting older, it's like, it just gets harder and harder to try and keep all that area, because an acre and whatever is quite a large area to look after. So for her, it's just like, it was like, well, I more care about this little area that I'm looking after now. And that area outside of that, which is the wild garden area and whatever, she still cares for it and very much, is connected to it, but it's less important to her. So again, I think it comes back to what your heart is yearning for, what you're feeling for, what the area that you care for is the area that will get protected. So I'm sure that if we're trying to work this out as a science, that if someone tries this and has a real strong connection, I'm sure that you can expand those fields for miles and miles, if that's what you, but for my mum, as she's getting on a bit, it's like, this is the area I care for, and this is the area that I want to see looked after and stay pretty and all the rest, So I think I've drawn you a circle there, and I paced it out and you could kind of see that, but why I was able to pace it out, I think pretty much is because that's what is in that eye shot and that's the little area that my mum looks after and potters around in the garden looking after the flowers, and she's got her hands in the earth in that little area. So I think it comes more down to that than it being that physical circle that you're seeing.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Let me check my notes and see what else I've got in front of me. Is there anything else I wanted to? And I've done the same in Mexico, actually, since we've been here. We have a little piece of land that my wife and her sister bought many, many years ago. So we're starting to, we're the guardians of this land now. So we're starting to work the land and so on. And since before all this had happened, obviously, in Dominica, I've done what I guess some would call a ceremony, let's use that word, on the land. And I actually created a plasma of me. And I did a little ceremony with the family, and we marked out the land here that we're looking after here, and it's a much smaller area here that we've got. And I put this plasma in we did the perimeter. Basically, I went north, south, east, west, and I splashed this plasma of me all over the perimeter of the land. And I didn't do it intentionally as any kind of a protective thing. It was just, that's my instinct, is to put my DNA into that land so that the land knows what I need and I know what the land needs. And Mexico's quite a prickly place, and you tend to shed blood on the land when you're cleaning it just because it's so flipping prickly. So my DNA is always on that land, and I think that's part of that process. if people want to try and work out how to replicate this, I think that's the important thing to say, is that you've got to have your DNA in the land so that it knows who it's dealing with and what your requirements are. And I suggest that you get to know the land too that you're working on, and so that you know, so that you create that connection, so that you create that balanced, so that you have the balance between the land and yourself. And so without doing it for any protective reason, I find we already did this ceremony in Mexico, you know, and it's, I don't know, some people might find that a bit odd. But I would say they're a different way. You don't need to create a plasma and do that either. You know, I think for women out there, you could do that with your menstrual blood. All your information is in your menstrual blood. You can splash that into the corners. I know it sounds a bit yeeky for some people, but I think that's true. And this is a way where we can connect to our land, connect to the earth, because there is a disconnect in these times. And let's go back to a closer connection, a spiritual connection to the earth, where, to me, I think humanity needs to return back to that in some way, shape or form. You know, let's go back to those let's go back to the earth. Let's connect again to the earth, because the powers that be have tried to disconnect us from from the earth. And to me, that's terrible. That's a terrible, terrible thing. Let me check what else I've got scribbled down here.
I have a question, if I may. Tom, this is Libby.
Hi, Libby.
When did you construct this building, and the one not in Mexico, but the one in Dominica with your mom? That wasn't that long ago, was it?
No, it was, I think it's about, the house is about 8 or 10 years old. Sorry, I'm bad with time. I think probably about 10 years ago. For sure, we started working the land. I mean, I was up there. I've got some funny pictures of me just with a cutlass in hand, starting to clear that land and create a space where we could start planting plants and stuff. But maybe 10 or more years ago. It's not new like a year ago. It's 10 or so years.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your perspective on how we are also being amplified, or amplifying the plasma is amplifying us. And my trying to understand what Mr. Kesh said about the Ganses do sometimes lose their energy, and then seeing that it's our intention and it's our relationship with them that keeps the energy going, is how I'm seeing it. And
yeah, exactly. And I see that that we can energize anything in that way. We can bring anything back to life, I think, if we focus on it, you know.
So, as a practical example, in this case, which you've already you told us about your backpack spraying of the area, which is a good visual. So the question would be, in relation to what Libby just said, would you go and spray it again in the same year? Would you spray it in the next year? Would you spray 10 times a year, 100 times a year, to give it more strength, more connection? What you know, does the GANs kind of wear out through the winter, so you have to reapply it in the spring? How do you look at that that quality of what you call plasma, or the GANs,
I guess,
water GANs material?
Personally, I just do everything by, and I know it frustrates a lot of the more scientific folks that are watching the work we're doing, because people like me do their heads in, because I don't tend to measure everything exactly and have everything perfectly documented and whatever. I do things on intuition. So, and I would work purely on intuition in my garden. I might just decide I'm not spraying anything, because I I'm going to try and do this through my own fields and not need the plasma, you know. So, but I know people get nice results from doing the various ways that you can detect energy. I know we don't have the tools to measure plasma really, but I know there are folks out there that do dowsing and that are able to read energy. So for me, these guys are a good way to measure whether those strengths, whether the field strength is still present. I don't do anything like that. It's all about instinct for me and intuition, and it's not it's far from a perfect science. In fact, it's not even a science of any kind as far as I'm concerned. It's a relation between me and the land that I'm a guardian of, and so I would just do it purely on instinct, really. And if my feeling took me to go with my backpack sprayer and respray because I was feeling like things were struggling. I mean, with plants, you will always get a visual because you'll see if they start to, if they're looking below par or if they're looking really lovely, you'll see it. So that's them communicating to you and telling you, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I'm thirsty, or, you know. I think it's important to, if it's your garden we're talking about, I think it's really important to keep touching the plants. These are, once again, we have a disconnect. We tend to disconnect and we tend to see these things as just something that's there. And I don't. I see them as little, lovely, beautiful, living entities that are as valid as any human or any animal. And perhaps more valid because they don't like to go to war and they don't fight. Well, no, that's not true. They do fight with one another. You see, something that was interesting when watching the rainforest, for me, it was a concern to see this rainforest have been so damaged. And what I can see now is that the trees are now left open and exposed. And what's happening now is the creepers are taking over. Now is the time for the creepers. And the creepers are having a field day right now. And there's a danger that the creepers are now going to creep over the top of these trees that are struggling, and they'll probably kill them. So there might be you might find the ecosystem has totally changed. And you've seen the images of the parrots that we've had flying around the garden and so on, and they're all searching for food. So the dynamics changed, the ecosystem has changed. So it's not that the plants don't go to war and they don't fight. Well, actually they do. One will dominate the next in the plant world too. But for me, they're as valid, these little lovely fluffy, like I'm looking at the image of the little red one in the bottom right hand corner. I mean, how beautiful is that? This is a lovely living entity, you know. And so it's time for us to reconnect to all living things. I keep emphasizing that we're disconnected. Let's reconnect, you know. And I know a lot of us are. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and most of you do live like that. But out there in the world, there are still a lot of people that just don't. They just don't see plants and animals as have any validity. They're just a food source for us, let's say, something that we feed on. And me, I haven't eaten meat since I was about 13 years old or something, because I just cannot. I see all these as souls, and I'm ready to go into the free plasma diet, I think, soon, because even eating vegetables, to me, I feel and see the soul of the vegetable I'm eating, you know. But I don't know how many folks out there think and feel like that, but it's important.
I tend to. It gets hard to go into a supermarket and buy groceries because, I mean, everything you look at is GANs of one kind or another to start with. So what kind of GANs do you want today? I don't know if I want GANs today. Especially not GANs of animals and so on. So
yeah,
it's I had to give that up a long time ago. But even the GANs of vegetables and so on.
I love the work that the guys are doing with the Master Fast. Those guys are really working on how to feed ourselves with, what can I say, consciousness. And we really don't need to consume to live. We can It's a wonderful. I am going to join those guys on doing the Masterfast at some point in time. I always seem to be in transition, which makes it difficult. But I love that. I love, because this is the ultimate, you know, getting to the point where you don't need to consume and you don't need to take. You can be in a state of giving when you're doing that, and to me, that's wonderful.
I felt the best and had the most most energy at any point in my entire life after fasting for 10 days. So
Yeah.
it's very powerful.
Yeah. And it's a process. I think it's important that you don't just dive into something like that. You've got to be in the correct heart space to do something like that. And you know, the folks that struggle with it,
some people
they've jumped into it without being in the right heart space. You know, so you've got to. It's something you need to prepare for, doing that kind of thing.
True, but some people might be on the edge of death or something, be forced into it, like I was, and not forced exactly, but the other alternative was to have invasive surgery in a hospital, and that was not something I was interested in. Yeah, I'll try fasting. I'll do anything, and it worked out perfectly. It was very much a spiritual as well as physical transformation.
Yeah.
Highly recommended for those who haven't tried. What was I going to say? Oh, we had a question from Miguel earlier, and we also have another attendee with their hand up, Theodore. So perhaps you can take a couple of questions here. You have some more you wanted to talk about, Tom, right? Or
no, I mean, I'm happy. Let's have a chat, because we're on an interesting subject. We're on an interesting topic here. So it's for me, I'm interested to see what people think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's open it up and have a chat if anyone's interested.
Okay.
Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Hello, I am Miguel. Sorry, Rick.
Yes, go ahead.
Miguel from Mexico.
Yeah, we can hear you. Hi there.
Oh, sorry. I just have a question. You were talking about the energy to transfer your energy or put energy in some plant or earth. But I have a question. Did you try to do it to another thing, in another way, to a car or something like that?
In what way? If a car is your example, in what way?
Like that, send your energy to your car. Did you try it?
I've put GANs in the car for sure. I think once you start living like that, I think you're doing it all the time with everything. And so the objects that we have in our life, such as cars and whatever, obviously we don't want them to go wrong, because that equals we've got to pay money to get them fixed if you're not a mechanic. And so I think, without thinking about it, I think we're doing this all the time. But the more that you really tune in to creating the balanced fields, I think it just starts happening. And once again, it's a trap to say, I've worked it out, and therefore everything in my life is perfect. My car doesn't break down, and my plants grow perfectly, and I can just feed my everything with my intent, and everything is perfect. It doesn't work for me like that. I'm not there yet, but I do it, yeah. And I try and create each moment in my life like that, because I know what I want, and I also know what the things that are around me. I try and make sure that I know what they want, and I try and be in a state of giving for what they want. Now, obviously, the objects in our life, like the piece of metal that is your car, might be difficult to connect with it on a soul level, no? But I think when you put yourself in the state of giving, you are increasing the chances of those things that are a pain to us, those things like taking the car to the mechanic because it broke down, or whatever the example is, I think you're increasing the chances of those things not happening to you. It's like you're dissolving physicality, is the way I see it. And
Yeah.
physicality starts to become something that you play with it. To me, I keep in a playful state. I do it with my children, I do it with my friends, and I stay in a playful state where I don't get caught being too serious about everything, and I don't get caught being too, like in English we say heavy. I don't know if that really applies into other language, but I don't get caught being too heavy, because when you find yourself being even just a bad mood, if you find yourself in a bad mood, this is where the car starts to break down. This is where I mean, it happens to me. You can affect your electronic equipment, things like this, and so if you try and keep your vibration high, or if you try and keep the fields that you're emitting very positive and very balanced, I think this is that you're now in the space where the good stuff starts happening, and that's where you will, your car might break down, but you might find that you've just met the guy who understands mechanics, and he's happy to do it for you, and you make a nice trade with him, and he might want a plasma patch for his wife, and you're able to give him that, and then he'll fix your car. So you're playing with those energies. We can't control them exactly how we want. Like I said, we're babies. So you've got to put yourself in that space where the creation that's going on around you becomes what you require, but be in the state of giving. And that's where to me, you're most likely to experience what you need to happen once you're in that state of giving. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit out there, I realize. But
Thanks a lot. Tom, I have another question. I asked this because at the same time, I want to share something. I know you can put your energy, your intent into a car or something what you want, and that energy can be there a lot of time or forever. What you say is correct. It's a lot of correct. I do the same thing, and it's like that. You can feel your energy when you are with your things or in your house or wherever you were, and you can put that energy at that time in an instant to that electronics or something. But your things, you can put your energy to your things, and it's something like adding. You can add like a shell, like shelving your things, like shelving the things what you care, the people what you love. So you can put their intention in that too.
Yeah,
I do that thing with my car. I have like 6 months doing it, and 5 months doing it, consciousness, and it starts, like you say, to feel better. I don't have GANs and I don't have magrevs in the car. I just have one infinite or two infinite loops, and it works perfectly. It's very old. I have 30. It's have 30 years, that car, but it has too much energy from the past people who use it, and for me, so you can take that energy and using it. So in the or in the fields or wherever you be or wherever you want to be.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of the time we're inheriting energy. I've never been a big fan of moving into a house that somebody else has lived in, or let's say old houses that have got a lot of energy still sitting there from things that have happened there, or energy is a sticky substance. And I love working with clear, crisp energy that is very it's much simpler to imprint onto it. And sometimes we find it normal to inherit energy and just be around it and sit in it. And it can be the same with people, places, I don't know. And to me, we have the ability to clear energy as well, and to kind of zero the energy in a place, but you've got to focus to do that. But it becomes a way of life, I think, energetically, being able to clear energy and being able to perhaps make your own fields, your own field strengths be stronger than the field strength of the place or the existing energy of what you're experiencing, you know. It's about learning how to expand your own fields, I think. And being a positive person, that will always happen. You know, it's like Mr. Kesh says, if you're in a room full of people, see how you can just sit there and affect the energy in that room just by being positive and sitting there with a smile on your face, or whatever it is. You know, you can increase your field strength. And negative energy has a lot of, it's strong. Like, you know, if you've got a very negative person around you, their fields tend to dominate. But there are ways of neutralizing negative energy, and I got quite good at this in the place where we were living in Dominica. I had a little cafe. It was a bar and a cafe, but Dominica's quite a wild place, and there is a lot of craziness, and there are a lot of characters around, and so inevitably we would get all these, what you might call lunatics, coming through the door who want to be violent, or who want to just disrupt, or who want to, you know, they want the attention. And there are techniques you can negate that negative energy. You can if you put it into plasma speak, you increasing your own fields to the point where you neutralize that negative energy. So I got quite good at it because I had to there. And it was about protecting the people that were inside my cafe, so that, you know, you can't have somebody come in and start attacking the people that are there. But I couldn't just walk up to them and punch them and be violent, because now I'm matching their negative energy. You have to go up to them and spread love, you know, and it's fun. When you start doing that, it's great. If you can see
that's what I was just about to say, is the big tool that can be used is humor. Humor works really good. And I saw a bullying video recently where they were practicing this idea. And say a bully comes into your cafe, for example, Tom, and you know, and he comes in, and you know, someone looks at him and he says, "What are you staring at, you know, punk," or something. And if you're that punk, you could say, "Wow, you got a really nice T-shirt there, man. Where'd you get that?"
Exactly. You
and
flip
it just
that energy.
diffuses the whole thing and flips it, exactly.
Yeah,
and maybe that's enough to make everybody kind of crack up, and maybe the guy will then say, you know, well, I got it down in Disney World. I love it there, whatever. You know? And
yeah,
you end
up. And what you're doing at that point is you're increasing your own fields. I see like a blanket going over that negative, or whatever the word is, that there's a negative energy that's just come into place. But that negative energy has arrived somewhere because of something. That guy's got his story. Mm-hmm. That guy's got whatever happened to him that's making him that way. So there's a certain amount of sympathy involved, where you've got to see, rather than seeing some violent negative energy coming in, but you've got to be sympathetic to, why is that person feeling like that? I used to, not in a disrespectful way, but I would quite often say to the person, you know, you need a hug? You okay, man? I would stay. It's in Dominica, it was like, there's a lot of gangsters and bad boys out there, so you've got to do it carefully, right? But there's a way of doing it where you don't become like a soft target yourself. You stay very much the lion yourself, but you do it in a way. A friend of mine used to say, I've seen you doing it, and it's like you're sending love to them, and you're sending real beautiful love, but your eyes are saying, don't mess with me. So you have a very strong gaze into their eyes, and it's very, like you're going for soul connection, and my eyes are saying, I'm a lion, don't play with me. But your words are saying, love, 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 love. I love you, man. What can I do for you? How can I help you? But my eyes are saying, I'm as deadly as you are, So if you look at that through like a field interaction, you're trying to be the more dominant energy there. You're trying to neutralize the negative energy, but you're doing it with love, but you're not dropping your guard to the point where you're now a potential target, or and that's understand. And every incident is unique. I don't think there's a blueprint for that. I think, and that's about reading energy and the energy of every person, and it's the same with animals. If you find yourself in front of a dangerous animal, you've got to work out how to, you stare. If you do that technique with an animal and you stare into its eyes, it might well attack you, because that to it means something completely different. So every incident that's just an example, but I think it's important that we all learn how to play with those, how to interact with the fields that are in front of us. And that negative energy is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, more or less, because there are a lot of unhinged humans out there, But it's interesting. I like playing. To me, that's playtime when you're doing that stuff, because it's fun, even though it can be a tad dangerous.
Well, in that sense, that what we call negative energy, what normally would be called that, to someone that's playing in the world, like you're saying that you're playing with this, it's actually an opportunity, not a negative situation in a way. So it's just that there's additional energy for you to play with, for you to manipulate in a way, or to be to turn into something good out of that.
Exactly. And being in your heart in that moment, being very much in your heart, and be sympathetic to that, because people have gone through all kinds of terrible conditions on this earth. I understand. I can be sympathetic with why someone's a jackass. You've had a terrible start in life, or you've who knows what, who knows what people have gone through. You don't know, but all you're seeing is the end result of that, and that's someone that's being aggressive. But if there's a way to get back to the root of why, and then you can show a real sympathy for that person, and be in a state of giving for them. Like in the cafe, I used to say, after a while, I would say, well, can I, do you want a drink? I'm going to move you out of this space, because these guys are kind of scared of you, but you want to come at the back with me and I'll give you a rum? Let's go. And put my arm around him, and gently guide him out of there, so it's, but do it in a state of giving where you can connect with that person. And I think after a while, if you maintain that energy, you'll start to, it happens less and less. You'll have less quote unquote negative energy coming in your space, because you've set up your little plasma oasis. You've got your little dome around you, and whatever, and the things you care about, and it happens less after you start to understand how to play with those fields.
So there seems to be like two elements involved that I see here. One is that the idea that you've set up this dome of protection, you might say, which is just more like a mood or a feeling or a field that gets emitted and set up. And then you also have the big guy comes in and aggressively starts addressing people. You still have the skills within your your skill set of dealing with humans, basically, that comes into play at the same time. So there's almost and that really comes from almost a different place, although they both come from the same place maybe, but it comes
Yeah,
from
right.
a different. It's more positioning yourself for a potential threat, even though you may not look at them really as a threat the way most people would look at that person as a threat, because you look at them, oh, here comes an interesting playmate,
Exactly.
rather than,
Exactly.
oh, dangerous threat, get the shotgun ready underneath the bar.
Yep.
It's like,
Exactly.
and this is the actual mentality of a lot of people in, maybe in southern U.S. or something. If somebody they don't like walks into the bar, they put their one finger on the trigger ready to make sure that there's law and order in there if there has to be.
Yeah.
But this is
And I
the
think,
new way of dealing with things is, as you're discussing, is diffusing situations by having empathy for the person. Number one, you understand their situation, and that understanding implies there's no argument, there's nothing to argue with, because you
yeah,
know where that person's coming from, you know their history, you just by
exactly.
seeing
And
where they're at.
finding common ground, as I
Mm-hmm.
said before when we were chatting, to me, I think it's important that you can find common ground even with what you're perceiving as being some sort of low life, violent, undesirable. No, find common ground, and not everyone can do that because of the way that you've set up yourself. Like, but if we create ourselves as being flexible, let's say, and organic in a way, you're able to find common ground with people and things. Same can be said for the animal world and the plant world. Find a common ground where you're comfortable, and that is positioning positioning yourself. That is what's the technical term, Rick? The field positioning of the fields.
Positive positioning.
Yeah, and put yourself in that environment, and like take something from it and enjoy something of what might be perceived as being some undesirable moment. There's a learning in it, in everything, right? In every, no matter how chaotic or how unpleasant a situation may seem, there is a learning in it. So you learn to position yourself where that doesn't affect you. And for me, finding common ground with that person, plant, animal, whatever, is the easiest way to do that. So in finding that common ground, you kind of become sympathetic, and at the moment you're sympathetic, you've created a balanced field. To me, I mean, it's not everybody would enjoy doing that, I know, but I
Could
think
you
that's the way to go.
lead us through that easy 1, 2, 3 step solution there again? How did how did it get to be where you came to the balance fields once again? That magical balance fields state where everything, there's no longer any friction in a way. You
Uh-huh.
resolved it, but how do you
Lack
get
of
to that? We need to give, not we, but it's a good idea perhaps to give people that are listening just some helpful hints as to how to get from square A, some incident that's in your face that really, could be aggravating, and maybe it already has led to the aggravation state or the anxiety state, in which case, in a way, you're already caught, and you have to go back a step in order to catch yourself, in order to get through the whole thing, looking at it as a sort of a game in a way, rather than taking it all too seriously, where we get hung up with the anxiety and hung up with
You're
anger and
right.
all these kinds of
Not getting
lower emotions.
overwhelmed by the situation is one thing.
So
um,
right off the bat, before, okay, let's lay out the scene a little bit. It's similar to what we see on the screen here, like your mom's place, some nice cafe somewhere. You're enjoying your coffee and having a nice sip, and it's a beautiful day, and everything could not be more perfect. and boom, the saloon doors burst open, and here's the biggest, toughest biker-like guy that you could possibly imagine. You think it's a guy, but you're not even sure. It's just this huge person that looks like they're ready to explode. Well, as soon as that door starts to open, you must already sense something's happening. What's going on inside yourself to start that process of it's not like you have to dissolve everything right off the bat or anything, but you know that something's coming up. So it's starting to spark something inside of yourself. Something's rising up to the occasion. You mentioned that before. Like you feel like there's another big field coming in, and you have to increase your own field. You have to elevate yourself to meet this challenge, you might say. So,
Yeah.
but all of that's happening in like a microsecond as soon as maybe even before the doors open in the saloon there. So,
Well, that's what I was going to say. Step one is realize that you've invited that energy in.
okay.
In
Very
one
good.
way, shape, or form. It doesn't seem like it, and that to a lot of people will just seem like that's nonsense. How come? But I think step one is realize you've invited it in. Like in the case of what used to happen a lot in our cafe was we made it really nice. It was really cool little hangout spot. It was really nice. So for a dude who's out there on the street experiencing conflict all the time and whatever, they would walk past our place and say, look at all those people in there with their nice lives, chilling out, having nice times, man. They're eating nice food and everything just looks so nice in there. Well, I've invited him in because I've made my space look so nice. Right? And why shouldn't he be allowed to come in? What? So like we're only allowed to have nice people in there? Well, no, not really, right? Because he just hasn't understood that he's got to walk in and behave himself. So step one, you've invited that thing into your life, whatever that is, you've invited it in. So at that point, realize that part of it's you and part of it's him or her. And I think being able to do fast on the spot analysis as well is good. Is this guy likely to punch him if I'm a smart ass with him? Is he likely to punch me if I'm smart with him? Or am I better off do a fast analysis? I think a lot of people, it's quite difficult doing that in a moment that seems to be quite stressful. But I think that's part of it too, is like very quickly analyzing the person who's in front of you or the whatever it is. It could be animal, it could be anything, and understand what that person is expecting, because quite often they're expecting conflict because they realize they're bouncing into your place in an aggressive manner. They're ready, and part of them is playing that game where who's going to challenge me. So, and then step two is how to diffuse it. But this, you've got to make those you've got to do that in milliseconds, which is not always easy, is it? So, and I think the same can be said of interactions that aren't interactions of conflict as well. That any interaction, you've got moments to read the situation and then find a place where you're okay and comfortable with it, and then move through the process. But the way I move through any interaction is understanding that I've invited it in, and now it's me to work out what I'm going to gain from it or what I've got to put into it. Or so in that scenario, sometimes the right thing to do is to say, hey man, you want a drink? Come on, chill out. Let's just go take a drink and tell me about your day. Right. And then that means I've got to make a little sacrifice. I've got to buy the guy a drink and I've got to spend 5 minutes of my time doing something I don't really want to do. But hey, let's get in the state of giving and see what happens. Right. And you never know. Well, I do know most of the time something good will come out of that. Like you'll find that you might make a friend. You might end up with a bad guy on your side then, and that happened quite a lot in Dominica. I ended up with quite a lot of guys who were total rogues, killers even. Really, I'm no joke, killers. but play the game with them, and then they're on your side. And now it's not that you want killers on your side, but at least they're not going to come and want to go on the attack with you. And I just see it's a game you're playing. I don't know, man.
I'd like to add something here too that helps me a lot is I really look at every human being as my brother or my sister.
Yeah.
And so that's a brother that's struggling or a sister that's struggling when someone walks in or is aggravated or is in a bad mood. And if we have that as a mantra within ourselves that this is another human being coming from the same source as I did, struggling through life like I have or others have. And can I look at him as a brother and say, hey, brother, how can I help you? And that diffuses a lot of things. Just that line, hey, brother, how can I help you?
Because if you come in on the what might be your instinct might be, oh God, get away from me, you know, like I don't have time for you. What right do you have to come into my space? And if you can flip that energy in an instant is very, I mean, I haven't got this down perfect. I'm sitting here talking about it like I've got it down, you know, but certain things trigger me and I might respond wrongly. But I think the more that we, like I said, we're babies, so it's a process. So the more that we can learn to deal with what's in front of us, the more we will benefit. And instantly, instead of thinking about yourself in that moment, I don't want this guy in front of me. What right does he have to be here? And I don't need this in my life. Well, you do need that in your life because it's just come into your life. You've in some way, shape or form, you've invited that in. And the older I get, the more I sort of see everything as a mirror of me. So when that bad guy comes in being horrible, that's a part of me in me somewhere is that bad guy who wants to burst into that place and be a jackass and cause problems. Well, part of that's me. I see that that's the mirror of me. So once you start seeing that person as you in a way, then you understand better how to feed it, how to feed the baby, you know? And I think once that to me is important, is seeing every other entity as an aspect of yourself. And then it's very difficult to hate yourself. No, like if you've got that person in front of you and they're being violent, well, it's you in a way. I realize it's a bit out there for some folks to sort of look at it like that, but that's how I deal with these situations anyway. I try and see whatever's in front of me as a mirror. And in the same way, we're talking about bad men and whatever and bad situations and not nice stuff. It's the same with the good stuff, the cream, you know. That's you too, and that's you being rewarded in some way, shape or form for being good. There's a mirror coming back at you, and there's the good stuff because you did something good. And I just think energies are matched in where we are right now in this. And maybe it's the same universe wide, I don't know, but I think energies get matched. So the energy you put in is the energy you get out. So that bad man coming on my doorstep is a reflection of me at some point. And that's energy. And I don't know, it's like trying to measure plasma. We don't have the tools. I don't know at what point I'm having energy matched back at me. It might be from years ago. I mean, some people call that karma, you know, it might be from 20 years ago that I'm now faced with some situation I don't want in front of me. But if you're able to just work through that and see it as a reflection of yourself and something you need to learn and take from that, then in there is wisdom comes with that over time, you know. And I think most humans go through this process. Now, some get it, some don't, some learn, some don't. But I think key is just understanding that it's you. Everything is reflecting back at you. It's being matched. Your energy is being matched. Some people don't ever have these not nice scenarios happen to them. some people just go through their whole life and they don't experience bad things, and everything is a bunch of roses, you know. And I'm guessing that's an energetic match. And who knows if this transcends into other lifetimes and other dimensions? Who knows? We don't have the tools to measure it, just like plasma.
Thank you, Tom. We have Theodore had his hand up, and I think wanted to say something, as well as it's someone else. Oh, Estella as well. But let's, Ted, do you want to go ahead? Do you have a question or something you wanted to say?
Yeah, this is Ted. Just
Hi.
enjoying Tom's talk this morning. Very beautiful, Tom.
Thanks.
Learning a lot. I
Yeah,
have,
me too.
oh man, it is beautiful when you get to voice your ideas, because it really helps, at least for me, it helps me clarify my own ideas. And it's really nice. I like sharing ideas with people for that reason. Um, I'm wanted to chime in because I heard you mention dowsing earlier, and you spoke of it like those that can dowse, and I just wanted you all to know that I have not had a single person come up to the farm up here and handed them a dowsing rod and have them walk around and them not feel the energy of all different walks of life. And it's a very powerful tool, and I think it is closely related to the field effects that we work with the technology. And I utilize my dowsing.
Ted, is that energy that you're sharing with them through the work with plasma, or just the general nice vibes of your farm, which like specifically?
Well, when I work with plasma technology machines like a MagRav or whatnot, I'm constantly using the dowsing rods around the room to try to locate fields and different lines where they interact. But I also have so much spring water here in West Virginia where I live that it's really hard to dowse anywhere without hitting a line of water, that's for sure. So I just find that too, the gentleman that taught me about dowsing rods, he taught me first thing to do was just to hold the dowsing rods loosely in your hand and let them rest forward, and start to verbalize things like, say, my name is Ted, and I'll repeat it over and over again, and the dowsing rods will eventually start to either cross or go away from each other. And then I can repeat with something that I don't believe is true, like my name is James, and then I'll see that the dowsing rods will do a different action. So then you can achieve what is your yes and no. Is your yes when the dowsing rods come together and make a cross, or is your yes when the dowsing rods go apart? And then by allowing that to work, you can kind of, for me, tap into your the way people use like pendulums and stuff like that to assess if they feel the energetics of a certain decision or things like that. And sometimes I use the dowsing rods for that. So the dowsing rods can pick up on numerous things. If people's intention is to find buried treasure, there's people with dowsing rods that can walk around and find buried treasure. So it's pretty amazing. And I just want to put that out there because I know that it's an inherent gift within all of us to use the dowsing rods and to use either wood or copper or metal and hold it in our hands and just feel the fields. There's a couple of little devices my friends gave me from out in Utah, some kind of relics from the natives there. They call them McQuee balls. I'm not sure how you spell them, but they look like little stones. One of them, there's a female and a male one. One of them's shaped kind of like a flying saucer, and the other one's shaped kind of like just a ball, and they're about the size of golf balls. And if you hold them in your hands and you rotate them around for a while, you can feel like a magnetism and a repulsion, like a gravity field and a magnetic field. And it's very odd because there is no magnet in there. I mean, you could test them with magnets. I don't know what they're made of. They're definitely old. And when you move them around and feel that field, it's not so strong that you can't say, well, I could push against it and touch those balls together. Of course you could. You could push through that field and touch those balls together, but they don't want to. There's a field there. And I was talking with a friend of mine and I was like, what are these balls? Like, what is the purpose? And he's like, they're a training tool. He's like, once you feel that field within those balls around your hands, he's like, you don't need the balls anymore. So I was like, really? And so I put those balls down and I started moving my hands around each other for about 20 or 30 minutes. And then I started feeling that same feeling. Like every once in a while, I hit a wave of repulsion and a wave of attraction, and then I can kind of ride those fields with my hands. It's just a simple exercise that I do to intensify my maggrav fields and things like that. And I wanted to share that with you all.
Yeah,
I'll
some people do that with crystals too. Some healers are able to like move a crystal around the body if they have somebody in front of them and that has some issues physically or whatever, and the crystal will suddenly stop in an area, and that person won't be able to push past that area, and they can then recognize that that is an area that has a blockage or something, and it's the same thing. And the next person will pick the crystal up, and that wouldn't do anything like that. You know, they won't feel anything with it, and it's the same. It's the same stuff. I think there are many different examples of that type of playing with energy, or let's say feeling energy, you know. And ultimately we don't need the thing, like you're saying, or whatever the thing is, be it crystal, be it the little balls, or be it the dowsing rods or whatever. It's about us being able to learn how to measure that energy and how to really feel it. And the more we progress as humans, the more we'll get this skill set back, I believe. Anyway, I think over time it's going to start becoming a lot more natural to us, and we'll all get that skill set back, because right now most of us are pretty numb to those subtle energies.
Well, I was going to say that there is hope. For example, in my Kesh Plasma reactor group that I've had for several years, every week, there are people such as Lee in that group that have made literally hundreds of devices, maggravs, coil setups, different rotating setups and spheres and all this kind of thing. And this one particular person has made probably 100 units and has not felt the fields until recently. Until recently, he built a unit that you put your hand into, like a box. And he said this a couple of months ago, he was just stating about this new box that he built. And he put his hand in, and he could feel the fields on his hand. I said, "What? You could feel the fields? You've been telling us for the last 100 reactors that you can't feel the fields, and you have to get other people in to feel them for you, and people that are more sensitive, and so now you say you can feel the fields?" And then the next week he built a different box, and he started telling us about how different this box felt compared to the last one. And then I had to tell him, not only can you feel the fields now, but you're telling us there's a distinction between these fields and the previous ones.
It's like once the door is open, right?
That's right. Now, literally, the door is open. He made a health unit that you pull these coils down over you like a door, and you sit inside on a chair, like with these coils of GANs around you. And he says, yes, I can feel the fields. It actually makes my feet warm, he says. So now he's not only feeling the fields, but he's getting physical responses when he feels the fields and so on. So this is why I say there is hope for those of us who may not actually feel the fields as such and think that that's kind of airy-fairy and so on. It takes practice, and it takes some dedication.
That's 100% true. I mean, that's true as can be. For 2 or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I've been messing around with organites, all kinds of energetic things. I mean, I knew the potential, but I never felt the fields until recently myself. And so
what I think is interesting is for example, my daughter is I think there's a new generation of kids here that they're really sensitive to this. Like my daughter, anytime I make any little thing, I don't know, whatever it is in with the plasma, I've stopped asking her now, because every time she gets anywhere close to it, puts it in her hand or whatever, it's like, no, it's tickling me. No, I don't like. No, I can feel it. It's tickling, and the opposite, like oversensitivity. And I think there's probably a generation of kids coming through now who are going to be much more receptive to subtle energy. And I think probably half of the thing is that some of us, I mean, I'm still pretty young, I'm only 40 something, but I think a lot of us that we're pretty numb to subtle energies because of the, let's say, the harshness of our environment has made us pretty closed down, and we're very three-dimensional, and we're very touch sensitive, and anything that's outside of that physical touch is quite difficult for us to wrap our heads around. But it's my belief that there's a generation coming through now who are going to teach us a lot about subtle energy. They're just, to them, it's like it's as present as physical energy is.
I think maybe Estella might want to say something about that. Estella, go ahead.
Hi, hi. I'm in the balcony right now. Sorry for the noise. The person who spoke to today, thank you. It's been a wonderful sharing. Um, I'm a dowser too, a 10-year dowser. I call myself I'm an extreme sensitive person, but the whole issue is to get to the center point or the balance, like in the magnets. And I think this what we're talking about is self understanding, self how identify our emotions and our feels with the environment and with the people in our disconnection with everybody, that we think this is me and the other person is them. But when we are open to know, create that division and duality, our fields, they are much more friendly, and we are able to blend. And also, maybe I should call it, instead of manipulation, it's like transforming, like the positive becomes stronger, the field, and the resonance of the negative is blends with the positive, and you're able to balance that situation. Instead of go into a reaction, you shift the moment, and understanding that it society will, completely behave in a different way, because we learn, society teach us we need to react them instead to be friendly, right?
I think society has imposed upon us a kind of I win, you lose.
Right. It's like I'm in Argentina right now. I live in the United States, and I spent the last 2 weeks in Brazil, which was very interesting to me because I saw a lot of poverty. But something interesting was everybody was very friendly. The tone of voice, the conversation between people. I listened couples talking very sweet to each other, and it was for me very delightful. When I came to Argentina, and people are more intense, and the way they talk wasn't as like a song, and a harmony. And for me it was like, oh my God, tense, more, more intense, the, the, the feels of these people, and I almost feel tense. And I wonder why, and the history of one country is different than the history of the country. And sometimes these memories, people are tense by nature instead to be more open to be friendly. And I question that, why we are so programmed, to carry this fear of the unknown, that you need to be always protective or defensive, or instead to be open and, oh, everything's going to be okay, you just dialogue and have a good communication instead to be defensive. And I found it very useful, your sharing today, because remind me my duality, because I'm very sensitive to the extreme that I can blend with the negative like I can blend with the positive. I'm not perfect, and I'm inconsistent trying to balance myself. And that's why I'm learning about the plasma. And I think this is the more we we experiment, the more we learn. It's like dowsing. And it happened to me too, that at the beginning I used the dowser, now I don't need the dowser. I know, I feel I rotate my fields and counter, or clockwise or counterclockwise, depends on what I want to do. And yeah, and it's all visualization with our fields, with intention, but with also with integrity, knowing that you're not manipulate. There's no manipulation. Is balance with love, right? With a good positive outcome, not with something from the ego, right? From the mind. It's more from the heart.
Yeah,
That's
I
how
think.
I see it.
Thanks. I see. It's interesting what you're saying about geographically, that there are areas that are more where the people collectively, you can sense that energy. Because I get that same sense when I go to, because I'm from England, but I'm from the north of England, and I would pick up that same energy you're talking about when I would go to London, and I would just feel it like, wow, these people are so full of self-importance, and there's a speed.
Loaded.
And there's a speed and a certain intensity to the energy there, and huge truckloads of ego everywhere. And I used to feel the same thing, and it's almost like there are areas where that has been promoted. Like I guess it's done through. I guess it's the society of the way that society has structured itself in those areas. But it's interesting that there are areas where are the opposite to that. And living here in Mexico, I feel a lot of that. I haven't been anywhere yet where I felt that huge push of ego and self-importance, and everybody creates space for everybody else to be. And obviously the individual is the individual, and there are differences. But it's interesting, how around the planet there are those differences.
I used to be a salesperson in LA and drive in this 4-lane freeway, and so I use music to elevate myself. So in the car, I visualized I was a bubble of energy, like like in this freeway, like an orb, and I used to play with this in a good sense. And when people drive you too close, I will breathe in and breathe out like a friendly feel, and the cars would take a distance from me. And it works. And I started to keep doing it because I didn't know that I had that kind of, feel, but it's real.
Yeah.
And I have a power in my car, in my unit. And I noticed, I want to share this because it depends also on my feel on in a specific day. If I'm in a good mood, the cars flies. But if I'm not in the right feel, the cars is like not working in the right way.
So
it's
which is more powerful for you, Estella? Is the Magrav unit more powerful, or you, on the effects on the car?
This is an intuitive right now. I'm thinking that my emotions interfere with the unit, because when I am in the right mode of emotions and the feel, like a outgoing, happy, the car flies. It's almost you don't feel the wheels on the road, and it's light. But when I'm not, I'm tense, I'm stressed, or I'm not having a good day, the car doesn't feel in that way.
I have a question.
Heaviness. Yes.
Estella, did you make your own Magrav unit, or did you purchase it?
I went to the workshop and participated building it, doing it.
Because back to what I was saying about the garden, I think we will probably find that when our devices or our plasma or our GANs, whatever, I think that when our because if you make that device, there is no, I mean, unless you I don't know, behind a screen with thick rubber gloves, like it's gonna have your DNA in it.
Oh, it has, because I was in a 2-day workshop, and from the beginning to the end, my hands were there.
So I suspect that probably you will have a different experience than somebody that would purchase a MagRav. Like there are a lot of people that say, well, I bought my MagRav and it doesn't do anything. Well, I'm pretty sure that once that little device has your information in it, it's always going to respond differently than if you were to just have gone and purchased it. And I think the same applies with anything that you can just go and purchase. That's what I was saying about building and being involved in the process.
I've been working with my energies as a kid, and with the plasma, it maybe I got more sensitive, but I do believe everybody has this. It's just you start to discovering this, and intentionally, interacting. I mean, I can share another experience. It's kind of weird, but it works always. I don't like planes, but every time I'm in the plane, I do my meditation and my visualization of energy, and I create a film of energy or plasma in the plane, and the plane doesn't jump. Every time that we're going through air movement, I imagine myself actually holding the plane, and I have wings, and the plane goes smooth. So
the question is, are the other people on the plane experiencing a smooth ride as you are? That's something we'll never know, right?
You never know, because that's the other thing. I'm creating my own reality, right?
Exactly.
So, but that's what I just want to share, because I like to play. We had I have a farm in Northern California, and we had ice coming from the sky, and during the storm, I went outside and I started to work with the elements, and our plants didn't get destroyed. So I don't know. For me, is everything is sound, is feeling with your body, movement with your body, is using everything you have.
Everything is energy, right? Everything is frequency and energy.
Yeah, and I identify what you said, like the natives, and they used to dance, and I feel when with the eclipse, I dance and I sing, and I didn't focus on the eclipse how everybody was focusing. For me, was to elevate the vibration, so that eclipse would be, whatever effect. I just put happiness, no fear, because I know the fear is the enemy. So
yeah, the energy will the way I see it is the energy will always be matched, and therefore if you get in that state of fear, and it's a bit like what we were saying about the bad man walking into your space or whoever. If fear takes you in that moment, then the energies will be very different.
Well, there's a saying.
And you're right. And you're right about if you have the ego hat, because it's like you put your hat at the super person, they kick you down from the pedestal. You're not with the slap in the face. So that's like a rule.
Yeah. There's a saying, where attention goes, energy flows. So in a way, if your attention is on maybe protecting yourself or something like that, and then your ego gets all inflated about protection, and you're there to defend your cafe and shop, and you're going to do it at any cost, and you're locked in to that mindset right off the bat, then things may not go well against a stronger force that may be walking into the cafe, for example. But if your mindset is already um, open in the sense that you know that whoever it is, whatever situation you're dealing with, you're working with another entity similar to yourself who you know you can reach because everybody's reachable in some way or another. And you have a common ground, like Tom was talking about earlier, and all of a sudden it opens up a whole different thing. So if our attention is sort of a higher attention, you might say, or our attention is not already locked into those lower emotions, into those habitual reactions that we might tend to have. Instead, we're pulling back a bit and we're watching ourselves almost to make sure we don't have those reactions, or at least check those reactions, because it's almost impossible to have those kinds of reactions and have empathy for the other person at the same time, because you can get too focused on your own personal stuff
Yeah,
rather than what's actually
it
happening in the
it's
situation.
so it's what Tom said. It's the learning experience, almost reminding you where you don't want to be. You know,
I
it's
think
like here.
society has trained us through fear-based programming that we need to protect everything we own. We need to build fences around ourselves. We need to defend that mentality of we should all keep guns ready for what boogeyman's coming to get us, and all that fear-based programming has kind of entrained us, and at that point we become the magnet for that stuff, so it's like, to me it's very important that we undo that programming that's fear-based, because and by design, I believe it's by design, because the more nefarious characters upon our planet right now know this stuff, and they know
Yeah,
that when you create that environment of being defensive and needing to protect and needing to, I try and live my life the opposite, where I do not fence myself in. There is not a boundary, and that, like the land that we have from my mother's place there. Everybody just thinks we're nuts because we don't have a fence around it. But how are you going to stop? How are you going to stop the boogeyman coming? And my mother doesn't even lock her door. I probably shouldn't say that, but she doesn't. The door is open. Somebody wants to walk in there tomorrow and just go and help themselves to whatever's in there. There's not much material things in there anyway, but they can. And the truth is that doesn't happen because the fields have been created that are they're not defensive and protective and aggressive, and it's an open door. And when you have your open door, guess what? The boogeyman doesn't come through it. And I guess maybe there might be one or two instances where he does, but it's my experience that it doesn't happen. And the same can be said for us as humans and the way we set ourselves. If we have a fence around ourselves that says we don't want anybody coming in, and we're in that fear state where we're so defensive. And if you just walk through any big city, that's what you'll see. Everyone is very much in their own little bubble, and they do not want interaction. They won't look at you. They won't say hello. That's why I like to go and live in places that are countrified and whatever, where the people say good morning to each other, and the vibe is just so different. And I think it's important as humans that we break that mold of fear-based programming, which has us all defending all the time, defensive, because guess what? It's going to get matched. You're going to receive the thing that you don't want.
I agree so much. In fact, I was just thinking about this idea of what the word we call humans, and so on. And what in the situation you're just speaking of, Tom, like for example, in times of my past when I've been out in the what we call out in the bush, or out in nature, say tree planting or something like that, for weeks at a time, And then you come into a city and you see the juxtaposition, you see the extreme, stuff that's going on, all the bright lights and the advertising and all the attractions and so on to try to get your attention and this sort of thing. And you realize that the people in the city are usually very much involved in their own life. They're trying to get from point A to point B, and they're usually a little bit late or feel like they're late, and they've got to get to work, or they got to get home, or they got to get the kids somewhere. All this kind of stuff. There's a lot of pressure that it's tangible in the environment. Basically, it's a certain kind of stress, and um, it, it seems to me that the people that are in that situation, they're identified with things in their mind, with their emotions, with stuff in front of them, and so on. They don't have the time and attention to look around them and see that, oh, here's Tom coming down the street. I don't know this guy, but look, he's got a bright light in his eye. He looks like he's really aware and awake today. Hey, buddy, how you doing? It's not. Most people are so enmeshed in their own life that they don't have time to look around and see like, oh, there's somebody else that has their the light on inside them, and they're looking around to see if there's any other beings that actually recognize themselves here. And so this is the word that comes up for me, is the word being. So is it we have a cities full of humans, but they're not humans that are being. They're not present. They're not there in their totality in the moment. They're there busy in their busy brain, figuring things
But
out, trying to
you,
get to the
what
next
you
spot and so on.
what you describing, I mean, we talk about environment and nature. If you go into nature, you hear the wind, the birds. In my house, you can even hear when the leaves fall from the tree and onto the ground. It's so quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and your body blends with that quietness, and you're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm in the city. The cars, the you know everything is noise. The noise doesn't let you even feel your own body because your senses are bombarded with stimulation of all different kind of from the
Mm-hmm.
eyes, from the skin, the cold, the wind, the people. And
Right.
but the
So,
point is the point is to identify those things, because you are like a ball going down the hill by the inertia of the movement, and you're not able to have control or self management of your fields because you're bombarded. and
right.
and
That's
you're
why people go to monasteries or, go off to a cave somewhere or maybe some resort or some sort of class somewhere on a remote hilltop or something, is to get away from all the what we call distractions, which are the ordinary things of living in our high tech, high pressure cities. And that's part of this is what I'm saying, is that people generally tend to lose touch with that part of themselves that is our essence, our essential self, our soul, essentially. And it gets covered up unless you're taking special courses at night in order to make you
Well,
more aware and
actually,
awake and so on.
I study architecture, right? So you have visible and invisible forces that condition your space, your perception. So you can have a tall wall, a short fence, a tree, and create limits that your body feel compressed or feel expanded. The same with
Yes.
the other things.
And what do they
And the
do in
fields,
most
right?
downtowns to design? They design it so that you don't have people sitting around and loitering.
Exactly.
They don't want
Like the
loitering. That's the biggest thing.
like like bars or coffee places, they design a way so people only sit for 5 minutes buy a coffee and keep going. And you don't know because the space is not inviting you to sit for hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that there is a manipulation of this our spaces, our environments with a purpose. But the
Mm-hmm.
fields and the knowledge of the fields is to restore a natural balance that the because the universe works with those forces in a natural way, no artificial way. That's how I see it. Like now we're restoring the harmony with it in a natural way, how we're supposed to experience this reality.
For me, I have as I'm listening to you chatting there, what springs to my mind is what I observe and enjoy observing is the way that children can dissolve this coldness that society has. When I think about that busy hustle bustle city street where people don't say anything to each other and everybody's closed and all the everything is designed about staying inside, children have a wonderful way of dissolving this stuff, and I believe that if the more that we can stay in our childlike state, the more beneficial for us it is, and we won't get it's that societal pressure that has us in our own space with our eyes to the ground, not wanting interaction. Children don't have that. Children are so beautifully awake and with their eyes like the world is magic, and they haven't had it spoiled for them yet. Some aren't that lucky, but most of them. So for me, I think it's a very nice way to, if we can stay in our childlike state, this is a way that we break that mold. We break that because it's very difficult for the person. If I walk down the street with my kids, they want interaction with the people. They want to say hello. And no matter how grumpy the old man is, when you have a lovely little innocent child come up to you and say hello, you will dissolve that hard shell. And I think we all should try to get ourselves into that childlike state in a way where it promotes openness and love and these things, that because we're born with this stuff, and then it's only over time that this stuff wears away and we become worldly. What's the word I'm looking for?
You just nailed something, because I do believe I'm 54, but I feel like I'm 27. Okay. And I walk everywhere. I do things that people my age don't do because I still feel like I'm a child. And I think we should all remember when we were so happy and doing things and creative when we were kids, and how you rescue that spirit, that sense that we had, playful,
Yeah,
Sure.
I like to add to this children idea, and the idea that when
open.
we're
Like
real
instead,
young children. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry,
no,
Stella,
no, go
you
ahead.
broke up there. We couldn't hear the last sentence or so. That's why Ted came in. Okay, go ahead, Ted.
Actually,
Okay, go ahead, Stella.
no,
Somebody.
I'm done. I just want to
Okay.
say I think everybody just need to think when you were smiling as a kid with those eyes of, wanting to do things and seeing everything good because you didn't have a preconception, you know.
So
It's a way to,
So the childlike but not childish, you might say. So still with a childlike attitude, but with the knowledge that we have at the same time. So when the big guy comes into the saloon, we know how to deal with that, and we'll find a way to deal with that. We won't go hiding off in the corner like a scared child might do, or something like that, because our essence which was small when we were a child, has also grown through our experiences. And when our child comes out in our later life, like Tom's child comes out to deal with this big guy coming through the bar doors, he's there face to face with that big guy because he brings out the child in that big guy in a way, because that's where the
Exactly.
commonality is. That's It's the essence that has the commonality, the soul, not because you both play billiards or something like that. It's the physicality may be there, some sort of relationship, but the true relationship has to be with that soul, with the essential self, with the essence. That that's that part of us inside. That's the part that does get covered up, usually from about 7 years old and up.
The essence
Um,
and the innocence.
yes, and it sort of goes hand in hand in a way. I remember definitely when I was about that age that I just realized what is going on with the learning about the world, and I thought, is the whole world crazy or am I? I don't get it. It seems like everybody is just doing crazy things. They don't Doesn't make sense, from my little kid's point of view. Still doesn't to me. But I'm starting to understand why people do the things they do, or why I do my own things that I do that are unexpected, or that I come short on, and so on.
I think it's a thing we can go back to at any point in time as well. There is no barrier there that says like you've grown old now and you cannot revert back to that.
Absolutely not. In
Anyone
fact,
can.
I think it's the opposite, where I figure by the time I die, it's hopefully some years down the line, that I'll be the youngest in my life. That's what I hope to. I hope
Well,
to
I think that's
actually,
what
I'm
happens
going
most of the time
backwards.
naturally too, right, Rick? I think as we're born and we're born into the world with a certain innocence, and as you watch the old folks, and especially as you get right to the end of your life, they tend to go back to innocence and the childlike innocence. They
Mm-hmm.
go back to the very simple way of looking at things, and so I think that's something that happens naturally, but it's the center of our life where that gets rinsed out of us in some way. But I think it's important if we can find a way to keep hold of that through the midsection of our life. Somewhere in there's a key to creating a beneficial environment for yourself and for everyone around you. You can, at any point in time, you can decide, well, you know what, I'm going to go back to my childlike state,
Mm-hmm.
break out
Mm-hmm.
of those. And I think that's key, is like breaking out of whatever societal programming. I
Yes, and
call it
usually,
programming, but I don't know, there's probably a better word than programming, but something that society does that kind of crushes out all that innocence out of us.
well, you could say Mr. Kesh calls it the conditions, the environmental conditions, you might
Yeah, right.
say, and that includes all the psychological stresses and everything else going on in that environment. So, yeah, I totally agree that returning to our essence state that we had, or still have actually, and naturally actually comes up through the day if we were able to recognize it, and to get out of our busy brains long enough so that we can recognize these other parts of ourselves, that they're the greatest part of ourself, actually, this thing we call the essence or soul.
Humor is a very good tool for that too, I find.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, I mean, let's see the light, see the funny side of things, and that this is a wonderful tool for breaking through that drudgery of the day. Is like if you can sort of see the comedy of things, children do this. Children are constantly laughing at things and
right, and
seeing.
I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about some of these buffers and things that the conditioning and stuff that happens. Sometimes people um, sort of misuse humor in a way and end up into sarcasm or cynicism as
Mhm.
a buffer, or a it's like a wall that you put in front of you, and and you're cynical and have that edge, you might say, and people know that they can't, say certain things in your presence because that edge will come out, some cynical or sarcastic comment or something. And that's one of our ways that we put up walls and buffers around us to protect ourselves from things that might be a feeling interchange or something that could upset us a little bit or cause us to actually feel
It's
something
real nice
real
to
and
be
so on.
able to say anything to you all. I really appreciate the open-mindedness of our group.
Right on. Thank you.
When I was a child, I noticed that while listening to all this about the child, and we always come back to the child usually in the peace meetings, and I think it's for a reason. And when I was a young child, like you're saying before, Steven, a certain age maybe comes around, and it's like I remember just like my generation, like the plastic play school playhouses, everybody had one, and little plastic kitchen sets, stuff like that. And it really brings me back to Tom and the open door policy, because when I was young at that age, there was just my neighbors were all girls. I mean, anybody was there. We were all playing and everything like that. And then, at some age, it gets to the point where even as the child, you have that like keep out sign, like girls stay out, and then you're building your own clubhouse. You've learned how to work with wood and nails a little bit, maybe bust your fingers up or whatnot, and you got that sign up maybe, or the keep out sign, or members only sign, or whatever sign to elevate at that point. And like, even though a lot of the childish ideas and still the childish beliefs and still the imagination is so huge. Look, you're making clubhouses, you're doing magic in there, whatever. It's like, but that original essence of innocence, even within that transition, was lost just within the sign. And the open door policy that, Tom's mom has in her house is something that my family's always had. And it's something that, I think when we look at it from a spiritual point of view, or even from an energetic point of view, whatever word you want to use, it like with the others being as prevalent as they are, like, yeah, if you have an open door policy, like, is a boogeyman potentially gonna be able to come in or not come in or whatever? Like, the idea in my mind is that with the open door policy is that then all can come in, and without judgment, without understanding of why, and then knowing that everything does have a lesson, and don't have to decide, is this going to be a negative lesson or a positive lesson because of the situation. It's kind of important when dealing with that open door policy for me on the spiritual level, because as I've opened my door up, like, yeah, I mean, sometimes does the boogeyman come around, like, a little bit, but honestly, like, I've talked to some people about this, and like, once I've started to understand like a true empathy and actually like a willing to give, it really throws that off guard, and it puts it in the state of shock, and it puts it in the state of like, well, that's not my MO. My MO is not to come around and then you want to give to me. Like, and even when we have the closed door policy and we built up all these walls, and then you send it down to your friend. Oh, it goes next door. It go to your wife, your children, whatever. But when your door is open and then that interaction is allowed to happen, both sides gain. And by having the awareness that we're talking about and having the belief in our own power, like we're talking about, it really allows that interaction to be beneficial on both sides. And like, I can truly understand now how elevation of the others is not without, or not like far from our reach, even as we sit here and talk about how we're trying to heal, just within the human structure alone. Like, we do get out and talk about animals regularly. We do get out and talk about plants regularly. Occasionally, we talk about the stones and the earth. And we don't really bring the others up enough, in my opinion. And I think that is because there's a lot of fear with it. But there really doesn't have to be. And I think as our maturity raises and our true like responsibility that we know we have changes, and then we become aware, and that's like our knowledge is our awareness, and that's our protection, is just being aware, then we can really have control over any one of these situations. and whether it's that bully coming in the bar, the whatever these situations. And I'm really grateful that there's a group of us that are like coming to this understanding, willing to share it. I think that elevates it in almost like a kind of like a what are those community consciousness or whatever, where people have like a there's like a common consciousness amongst all humans. And it's like, I believe that this affects everything. And I know that our wishes, I wouldn't just put it in our hands alone, that our wishes within our group have changed the entire structure of the earth in front of our eyes within 2 years. Because I know there's been a lot of support from other groups too, but I know we've had a heck of a hand in it. And like, I'm really proud of us for that. And, anybody that feels like, they can't feel the field, like, everybody can feel the field when that bully walks in the bar. It almost like the music stops, but the music hasn't stopped. Nobody's adjusted everything. Literally, everybody knows that feeling. And so I find it hard to believe that there could be anybody out there that has never felt a field one way or another, whether it's making love, whether it's being in a negative situation, whatever it is. Like I think we've all felt the field. I think when we're thinking about acknowledging feeling the field, we're talking about the magic show and acknowledging feeling it in a certain way where we're actually controlling it, manifesting with it, and then utilizing it in a way that in most people's minds is the magic show, but it's not. And I just want to put that out there. And I love you all as usual. I love you very much.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks for letting me share.
I usually give an example when I'm trying to show people about the two forces that we have around us, being the push and the pull, the magnetical and the gravitational, and a very nice way, because a lot of people blank over when you talk about this. It sounds a bit technical for folks, so I always go and give the example of, say, okay, just be where you are, and what I'll do is I'll go and put my nose right next to their nose, and inevitably their head goes back and they'll move away. And I say, right, what you just experienced there, that was, I'm pushing, my energy is pushing, I'm pushing too hard. So that's the magnetical right there. And then you can give any example of the gravitational, which could be me sitting with a bag of sweets saying, who wants free chocolate and whatever. And there's the opposite, which is going to make you come to me. And that's how, when I'm giving workshops and stuff with folks who have no clue and no technical know-how and what have you about what we're doing, it's a beautiful way of showing the field strengths, the two field strengths, and getting a physical example of that, because always, I mean, I guess there'll be one or two exceptions, but put your nose up against somebody that you don't know, up against their nose, and they will go backwards because you just pushed too hard. And boom, you'll get a click, and people will realize what you're talking about with those two forces when you do this. So it's an interesting way of explaining the fields.
I think that's even better than the magnets.
Yeah, I mean, try it.
The magnets repel,
It'll-
but yeah, that makes sense. Not too many people are going to come closer to you. Some will, of course.
Some might. I mean, if you have the right perfume on, some might. But
yeah, right, exactly. Wow, interesting. That's a great example of the attractions and repulsions
Rick,
kind of force.
Rick, this is Ted. Today is the 12th of December. Have you been anticipating this date at all? Has anybody been feeling the 12th of December for a while now, a week or two? I've been looking forward to this date, and I don't know why. And I didn't realize there was a peace meeting today. But I don't when I foresee a date in my mind, I don't look at it as like, oh, it's the end of the world or anything. I'm like, oh, something good's gonna happen on this. And I've been writing my checks on the 12th. I still write checks. I write my checks on the 12th. The 12th's been coming up, and like I can't figure out why. But then when talking to you all today, I realized why, and it's like it's because it's monumental in my opinion that we get together and do these things. And I really want everybody to feel the feel the elevation that I feel in the strength, and really more of anything, the excitement that I feel about how powerful it is to meet up like this. And for me, like I understand Mr. Kesh not wanting to put labels on things like meditation and things of that nature, but honestly, like a true open door policy, like even within our day to day lives, like if any one of you ever wants to attempt to connect with me, you're more than welcome to. Sometimes I walk around the kitchen where I work and I'm almost positive there's somebody looking over my shoulder, and like I try to figure out who it is or what's going on or when we're connecting up. And like even the times where we meet like this and we're allowed to use technology and verbalization to connect up, it brings me back to the thoughts of how we've spoken numerous times during our relief efforts that, well, when lines of communication are broken down, how do we connect with the souls of each other? And in times like this, when we have like a group of people together that maybe has the time during the day to, even after our meetings are over for a half hour, just like practice your exercise of what you do with your mag-grav in an attempt that we can form our mag-grav larger together without the need of the technology being between it. And if I don't want to, push too far or overextend my step, but if anybody was willing to do that, I'd really like to do that. And maybe just 10 or 15 minutes after our songs or something would be really nice to me, to anybody that wants to work on that level.
Yeah, thanks, Ted.
Can
Is
you
that too
not
far? Did I
work?
overstep my boundaries on that?
Can you not work with the understanding or captivated in a different way that every person you touch to start thinking and being busy and being occupied with the direction to create a change for himself, a change for the one he's meeting, the change of his household, the change of his environment, the change which is extending further as we all using the words world peace, all connected with all. If we can pass and transmit not only by thinking, but when we speak the words, then that vibration just keeps on going and expanding because you've sent it out like a, as we all know, like a radio wave, and it picks up more and more and more, and it intensifies. And I think if we start what you just mentioned and what Tom has been mentioning, and Rick and so many others, if we extend our thoughts on how much time do we spend on it and how intensify we are busy with creating that change by being a teacher, by being a knowledge seeker, by giving a workshop, you speak the words and it gets intermingled in your teaching, so it magnifies. And this is the magnitude which Mr. Kesh has been explaining, because majority of the knowledge seekers, they first start to gather the information for themselves, to understand, to be able to work with it. But at the same time, they continuously are touched with the field strength of that it has to be given, it has to go freely. And then you see that starts expanding. And each one you touch or have passed the message, and even through your wording or your thinking, that's the field strength which you are all creating. Being here or not here today, it is intertwined in your daily, day-to-day life. So this is why these fields are growing so fast and so steady, because when you stay in touch with the Ganses, with the intent, and you teach and you share, and as Tom has explained very well today, you are the magnifier of whatever, and it always has to start with yourself, your intent. And it doesn't matter how you increase that strength, that you stay close. And for a lot of people, when they even go through a disturbing phase in their life, analyze why it's there. What is there to be learned from? Where can you change? How much is your strength to be able to put it right, to change it? And I think it takes time for that to come into view, but it also depends on how much have you been working on it with a repetitive structure for it to disappear, for it to change. When you see Tom's journey hasn't started yesterday. It hasn't started today. It hasn't started when he left to Dominica. It had started months ago when he got touched by the Gish Foundation and the knowledge, and he started working, and he was like a sponge, like so many of you. Now, you see the magnitude of, because even when, before he left back the first time to Mexico, he has left a structure and he keeps on feeding it. And he has a very good feedback position because of his mom and all the other people he has touched at the time he was at the island. So if he has achieved again a progress to touch so many more, leaving so much more knowledge behind, and they were working with it, they're producing answers, they're sharing it, and they're talking about it. So Tom, if, and all of us keep on giving that feedback to Dominica and what Tom has been, we can add our field strength to Tom's field strength, that it goes faster, that maybe by the next time the storm comes, we will be able to cover a bigger part of the island in a nice untouched zone. And it is not wishable for that to see it, but you never know.
I had a nice feeling, strong feeling when I was in Dominica that I don't know if you remember, I messaged you and told you, I said, I woke up this morning and I knew that we were there was a focus on us. And it was a really strong feeling. And then when I checked it out, I realized at the time that I felt that there was a workshop going on and we were being discussed. And I really felt like some kind of antenna when I was there, like being some sort of an energetic antenna. And I knew that the images of my mom's garden there were being shown around the world, and I knew that a lot of people were focusing on it. And you were sitting there on the porch there, and I don't know how to really.
I even know when it happened. Do you remember, Rick, when we said Tom has a workshop, he cannot appear on time?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was
about
the time.
maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I got that really strongly, that there was a focus on us, and I said to my mom in the morning, I'm like, look at the flowers that are in front of us. To me, they're getting brighter. To me, there was just an intensity to the garden that was like, wow, man! It was just like it was glowing, and I realized
that garden's famous. I've been working with my relief group over in Puerto Rico, and they all know about it. Everybody's like, well, do you know about this Kesh plasma garden? What's going on? How do you do that? You know about the Kesh Foundation. I'm like, I mean, a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, I think that one went right around the world, because I was getting messages from people saying, is it okay if can we show the images and can we discuss it in the, from respective countries? Like there are groups all over the world right now. And I became really aware that focus was on that little area. And you guys won't have seen it, but honestly, it was like you brightened up the garden. I mean, so to me, that those energy fields, just the focus of intent can have a reflection into physicality, which, I mean, we all know that that's a reality, but I can kind of testify to that attention that we were getting was like, I really felt like an antenna. and it was really nice. And I think perhaps it's something that we could focus on in the future is, you know, if you've got an area that you know is in distress in any way, or maybe it doesn't even need to be distress oriented, but if there is an area on the planet and that many people, and I have no idea how many folks put attention on us, but I'm guessing it was in the thousands. You really can remotely affect that area. And I know this isn't anything new, and I know that you guys all realize that that's doable and it is a reality, but I just want to sort of back it up and reinforce it and say that I felt it and I kind of physically saw it. It was like our garden was glowing. And so thanks for that attention and that love that was getting sent. People were contacting me and saying, how can we help? What can we send for you? And what can we, and my response generally was, you don't need to send anything. Just send that love, send the love, and we're receiving it, you know. And I think that really physically helped the environment. And I can say, I mean, this is a bit out there, but you know, the place started to green up again by the time we were leaving, you know, and by the time
we got the same feedback from Paul in Togo.
Yeah. And it's a reality. It's so that focus and that attention is really something.
That also explains that for people to trust their feelings, to trust what they're doing is okay, that it must be okay if we can stop and get a feedback straight away within such a short time frame. We don't have to wait years, so we can even go in a faster mode of creating that it goes like a wave around the planet, that it touches all of us.
Yeah.
It's just creating the focus and what are we busy with. But I think mainly, Tom, people should also understand that when you were working in the garden with your mom and the way you structured the house and the way you have explained, I think one thing should be mentioned for your result in so many ways and your mom is that you were peacefully working with the plants and the flowers. It was out of the caring point. It was not a fast job. It was something that was structured for that gardening because you said your mom knew exactly where to put what to put by where she wished for it to be. And when she wasn't feeling at ease, it showed in the result that the field was not that strong at that moment because she hesitated. So that is another point that should be shared with people. And that is when you feel something is not right, go back and change it till you're happy. And then it has your full blessing and there is no hesitation. And then nothing will go wrong with it. So always verify if you're gonna, even in what you're creating, there's nothing wrong and there is nothing right. But if you feel that there is something, I try to explain this, it's like an emotion which communicates with you or through you. When a lot of people most probably have experienced this, that when you place a vase or a bouquet of flowers or something that is dear to you, and you're cleaning and you're walking away and you moved it somewhere and you get that feeling, you know, it might fall down or somebody might bump in. It's just a flash. And this most probably was the same thing what happened to your mom. But she left the trees, she didn't replant them. I have learned if I go back and I move that precious object, no matter what it is, it doesn't fall. And if I haven't moved it, then the same thing happens like with your mom. It breaks, it gets bumped over. So I think it's just to bring people to their awareness, to pay attention, because you get like an intuition, you get told there is something, you feel it, it goes through you, something is not quite right. please just don't override it, but go back and correct it. And then you will see next time, maybe. But it was very nice that this happened, because otherwise it could have not been brought to our attention that those few trees got uprooted and badly damaged. But we had the beautiful, correct explanation. If you feel there is something not right, go and correct it. Take that 1 extra minute, pay attention to it and change it. You will see then everything stays intact, because the warning is already there. And the funny thing is that you feel the warning goes through your mind. It's not only emotion, it's like a little voice talking back to you, because it knows it's precious to you. You shouldn't put it there. So go back and correct it, even when you said something wrong to somebody. Try to go back with what you know, and just, it's a very simple thing. Go back and correct it.
My mother reminded me last week that I should say this, that at the bottom of the garden also she'd planted 4 coffee trees, which are now big trees. And the same thing again, she realized she planted them. You know, when you're planting a tiny little seedling, your mind's not on that thing is going to grow into a huge tree. You have a small thing in your hand, so your sense of scale is not always correct. So you might not always plant it in relation to how it's going to be in 10 or 15 years' time. And she'd planted these 4 coffee trees at the bottom of the garden there. And after the hurricane, when I was walking around and checking it, it was my mum that pointed it out. She said, "Look at that. We've got the 4 coffee trees, and 2 of them had blown down, but they'd blown down intermittently. If you imagine a line of 4 trees, after the hurricane, there was one was still standing, then one was dropped. The next one was still standing, and the next one had dropped. And it had kind of, they'd spaced themselves out where they should have been originally, how they should have been originally planted. And the hurricane ended up doing that for us. She was like, look, there you go, look, there's another example." And it's real. It's a very real phenomenon. It seems very peculiar to us, but it's real. It's a very real thing. We did an experiment a couple of years ago too. That, Rick, can you pull up that image you had of the mountains there and the 2 cups of coffee? Is that still on there? Yeah, there you go. I was trying to make a little experiment. I don't know if folks maybe who have me on Facebook might remember this. It was a couple of years ago, and we had. Now, how did it go? I'd made some sort of a plasma device. It was like a little health pen or something, and I put an image up of it. And my mother at that time she had a really bad toothache. And she was like reeling with pain. She was like, "Oh God, I'm just, you know that feeling when you've got toothache and there's no way you can put yourself." So I said, "All right, we'll do a little experiment here." And I put an image up of the mountains like that. And my mother was sitting upstairs where this photo was taken from. It's on a little balcony. And I said, "You just sit there and..." No, actually, I'm wrong. I was upstairs. She was downstairs. So I was there on the top, and I had this little, some sort of a health pen or a wand or something that I'd made. And I asked folks, I put that image out there, and I said, what I want to do is to see if we can remotely take away the pain. So I said, what I would like people to do, if anyone, I didn't even know if anyone was reading what I was writing or whatever, but you're there on Facebook, so there'll always be 1 or 2. I said, just focus your intent. What I'm doing now is I'm like I am right now, I'm staring at those mountain tops, and I'm using those as the antenna. And I asked anyone who was present to focus their intent and use those mountains there as the antenna. And let's see your focus if you can reduce my mum's toothache pain. And so I said, boom, go. If anyone's there, if anyone's listening, see what you can do. And it was a day like that that's on that image there. It wasn't a rainy day or anything like that. It was a nice clear day and the mountains were there. So we waited, and after 2 or 3 minutes, suddenly a rainbow appeared, and I took a photo of it and I put it online. I don't have it in front of me now, but a rainbow sprung out of the top of the mountain there. And at the same time, my mum shouted to me up from downstairs. She said, "Toothache's gone." And I was like, wow, man, that's just out there. You know, that was a remote healing session. I don't even know who was involved in it because I wasn't like communicating with them directly. I just put it out there. If anyone wants to join in this little experiment. And I photographed it. It was beautiful. Right springing out the top of the mountain came a rainbow. There was no rain. The day was clear. And boom, and the toothache disappeared. And to me, that was beautiful. That was like, it was real early on when I just started looking into the plasma stuff. And I was like, wow, you know, that just blew me away. I was like, wow, that was amazing, man. So it's a real thing, you know, focused intent it carries a lot of weight. It's very powerful. And I imagine in that case, there was probably only 5 or 10 people that did it. But I was able to photograph those mountains. I took the picture because I was so in awe of the thing. I was like, wow, you actually, who knows if it was us that were doing the experiment that forced a rainbow to spring out the top of the mountain. But I would say yes, you know, we really affected the environment. We affected the pain that my mother was in. It was very cool, very, very cool. I have another image as well, which I should share with you one day. Caroline, did you ever see the image of my glowing vegetables?
Tom,
Hi.
when you talk about focused intent,
Yeah.
you know, I know what my wishes are, and I'm sure you know what your wishes are. And when we come together and make these common wishes together, and I can focus on them, it really helps me a lot. Because I feel like it's so much more powerful when my wish is congruent with your wish.
Yep. There's a lot of energy within a wish. We shouldn't take it for granted. We really shouldn't. Powerful stuff, you know.
I got to admit to you, Tom, I don't drink as much water as I should because I only drink my spring water. It's not like that I just elevate myself. I won't drink tap water. I just don't drink tap water. It's nothing serious. I mean, I'll have a sip if I need to, but I've been practicing, you know, just in my mind, exercising, maybe not practice, but I've been exercising my brain to do that, not need water. Like there's plenty of water all around me, and I've found that like I really don't feel dehydrated. It's not that like I'm not drinking the spring water and I'm like kind of like how would I say, like maybe you know, imprisoning myself with my thoughts as, oh, I can't drink fluoride, I can't drink chlorine, oh, I only drink precious spring water. It's not like that. It's that I don't feel like I'll drink the spring water. I'm very grateful it's there. I'll drink tap water occasionally when I'm grateful it's there. But I have found that it really works to just kind of imagine my mouth becoming more moist, feeling that there's plenty of air around me, allowing with, and I practice that breath thing. I really like kind of a more shallow breath during that thought, and then a bigger breath after a few of the shallow ones. And I can feel myself get hydrated again, or at least all the signs of dehydration go away. And that's pretty powerful for me. Just a little exercise I try to do when I'm working.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're on our way to not needing.
Do you drink a lot of water?
I don't drink.
Do you flood your body?
I don't drink as much as I should. I don't eat as much as I should. But I'm very aware that I'm learning how to come out of physicality, and I'm trying to start to learn how to it's like what we were saying earlier, is like feed yourself with the whatever the word packages you want, the prana, the chi, the plasma, I'm trying to learn how to give yourself the energy, or how to give myself the energy that I require from the ether. I don't know what the word is, pulling it out, taking the energy from the universe, and it's very real. I mean, it's a real phenomenon. It's not a
part of
dream.
it? Well, like when Mr. Kesh talks about us being like a cell of a bigger organism, or a part of a cell of a bigger organism, or really a speck, like, do you feel like we have to make peace with all of those because of our diet and like the sugars and the different ingredients? Like, there's like I believe like a fungal or a yeast element that like it lives with us. You know, we could look at it like a parasite, we could look at it like whatever, but it's this entity, I feel like, that drives a lot of these cravings and whatever, and things like that. And I think that, do you feel it's necessary in your mind to kind of make peace with that, or to understand that as you change your diet, it'll no longer have, like, you won't be giving it a place to live anymore? Because I mean, as you change your thought process, as you eat less, it kind of starves that entity out in a way.
Well, can you make the analogy of the guy walking into the bar who's going to cause trouble, and how you deal with him? It's the same stuff, isn't it? It's like, accept that he's there, accept that it's something that you need to experience, or that you're experiencing, and then don't feed into aggravating the situation, which could be the same if you've got, whatever, your fungus that's in you or whatever that you don't want there. I mean, and I think probably there's quite a lot of folks that are studying plasma that have experienced that they don't get sick as much as they used to. And I, for one, can say that I haven't got sick in a very long time, and I'm starting to forget what it is to have that feeling of being coughing and sneezing, and if I think how I was 5 or 10 years ago, it's almost like in the year you would have 10 or 15 times in the year you get sick, and I can say in the last year or two I haven't been sick. I just don't get sick anyhow. I'm not saying I guess it can still happen at any point in time, and if it does, then it's something that I need to look at. But so it's that, make the analogy of the dude in the bar that's causing trouble, and if you can balance the fields with him, or with the sickness or whatever it is, then you will neutralize it. You'll create the space where you disempower it in a way, and you transform is the nice word that Stella used. Transform that energy and turn it into beneficial energy. Yeah.
Tom, may I request something, and you're going to make a lot of people very happy?
Certainly.
Can you get in touch with Danny Moore? She is running testimonies, and I think you will be a great guest in that teaching program, because you got a lot of testimonies.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think they will embrace you with the greatest of pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. I have a lot. I don't maybe share them as much as I should, but I do have a lot of interesting experiences working with the plasma. I have a lot.
I do know that you have a lot of them, and they're popping up one after another. And I think there are more people which are working in but Danny is one which stands out, which is really working a lot on it. And there are a lot of knowledge seekers in there, and they will embrace because they are collecting all the testimonies, and they never had a person like you who can go right across so many different experiences.
I'll gladly do that. I'm going to share one with you now that I was just about to mention, and I realize I've just been searching through my computer to find a photo, and I realize I made a little video of it. Rick, can I do a screen share? Let me just...
Please do.
It's totally off topic. Well, no, it's not. It's on topic because we're talking about all the possibilities that we can come across while working with plasma. What I will do, let me just see if I can set this up. Just give me a moment. Okay, and let me screen share. I made this little video, I don't know how long, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I don't know, but this was a little experience I had while I was doing the garden. And I still, maybe you want to shed some light on it for me, Carolina, I don't know. I mean, I have my theories and whatever, but let me just screen share. Share screen. Can you see that? Yes. Let me play this little video that I made. Some of the folks might enjoy watching this.
There's no sound. I don't know if there's supposed to be, but
Oh, okay.
if it's just music, then you can leave
Yeah,
it
it's
off.
just music.
I'll just leave it off because you might run into trouble with that.
Okay. Did you get that?
This one will be perfect for Dr. Guata. For the agriculture, it is beautiful.
So that was an experience I had for like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I was basically planted these veggies and I'll stop sharing my screen. I can let me just, okay.
Is there any pictures or anything else new that you'd like to share?
I've got a bunch of photos. I'm not sure. When I made a search, I just got that little movie that came up there. I don't know if it was too fast for folks to really see what was going on there, but
It's
basically
a little choppy and a bit hard to see, yeah.
I'll dig out some photos if I can, perhaps not today because it might take me a while to do that, but am I still sharing my screen or have I come off that?
But
no,
they can take
right
screenshots of this movie and then it shows it very bright and shine because I have the same results. If I may share my screen. Can I just 1 second, please? Give me 1 minute, please. I have to go into it.
It's a very beautiful experience when you see something like a plant used. I could just see its aura. It was just, that's why I ran for my camera. I wasn't sure it was going to come out, and luckily the picture picked it up and it was glowing. Yeah, right, like that.
Can you see this? You can see the same glow. And this is the paint pen. And the minute they spotted this, they send me these pictures. And this is quite from the beginning when people were learning how to make the paint pen. Now I saw the same glowing around your flowers or the plants. So if you take screenshots, you will have the same, but in a very more beautiful magnifying image that the glow is there. The field strength is there.
I'm searching now for the images that I took. I mean, we all know that with a camera. Oh, right, I found them. With a camera, sometimes you get these little anomalies where you can say, "Okay, yeah, it's."
But not when you don't use a flashlight.
Yeah. I'm pulling up a picture there to. For me, this was phenomenal. Like, let me just see if I can. Yeah, if I share the screen on that one there. Share screen. Can you see that? So I had the whole bed of vegetables that I was growing. Just had this. The whole bed was glowing, and I wasn't sure. Because at first I was looking at it. I wasn't looking at it through the eye of the camera. I was looking at it with my own eyes, and I could just see the aura of all these plants. And I was wondering, well, what's trying to work out what it was, if it was my eyes that were going funny, or so that's why I went and got the camera to see if I could capture it in the camera, if it was going to be the same. And I got it with the camera too, and it was very odd. I mean, it was one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had in my garden. It was, and I still don't know exactly what it was, because it didn't stay. It wasn't there the next day I went to look at them. It was a momentary thing in which everything in the bed that I'd planted, that I'd been spraying with the plasma, had a very, very clear aura of, what could I say it was? It was like a half an inch, and some of them a little bit more. And can you see that? I mean, people will say, "Oh, that's it's the light, it's your camera and whatever." But I went and got my camera because my eyes were seeing it. It's very, very, very interesting to me that my feeling was that the plasma was causing this, and the other things in the garden weren't glowing. It was this one bed, and to this day I don't know exactly what phenomenon that was. But I mean, you start working with the plasma and you will get anomalies. You will start to see peculiar things, and you will gather a bunch of testimonials, as you were saying in the end there, Carolina, that it's all interesting data, let's just say. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen there. Are you still there? Am I talking to myself?
No, we're still here,
good.
Tom.
No, we're all here.
Very good.
And I think it's time to close the session, because a lot of the team is already up and running and still has most probably a full day ahead.
Yeah, I think that was a good few hours we've waffled on there, wasn't it?
It's really good information. We have one last question that maybe sum things up, and you can quickly answer. Marley asks, please, in your words, how the plasma fields were set up in your garden: CO2, zinc oxide, CH3, etc., plasma water, from the plants' reactors around, or just from working with the plasma around the gardens? So just quickly brief us on that.
More or less, it was just the CO2, zinc oxide, the plasma water, the liquid plasma that I was collecting it until I had large amounts of it. And then, like I said, more or less putting it in the backpack sprayer and spraying everything. There wasn't, I think it was just that plasma. And I think it was a plasma that I'd first made. The first one that I made it came out really beautiful. It was like I'd used a pink Himalayan salt and plates, and it gave me this really lovely, beautiful plasma. And I think it was that plasma that I was using. I was just decanting every day the liquid plasma and then spraying once or twice a week, as much as I could, the trees, the crops, the everything. But it was just that one plasma, if I remember rightly. But there were, I mean, obviously there were other things around in the home, that little experiments I was making, but that was the only one that I directly put on the plants.
That's awesome, Tom. Bravo, brother. That's really great.
Yeah, it's interesting, huh? It's an anomaly. I don't know what to say, but
I think this afternoon I'll be spraying some winter plants with Gans water around the property.
that's it. It can't harm for sure.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, I noticed in my research back a long time ago into this similar kind of technology and agriculture that the Indian tradition in India, they would take their they would take poop of cows and bury it in the cow horn and then process it. And then when they would make their special water that they would just apply sparingly, like their very sacred water, they would mist it in the mornings when the dew was still in the air. And then when the dew suspended, like really early in the morning, like 4 a.m. before it fully sets, they would go and fling the waters up into the mist of the dew and actually energize the dew. So as the dew settled on all the plants, it carried with it the vibe. I just wanted to add that to the tech.
Right, biodynamic farming, I think they call that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Does that make sense? Kind of similar. Could you see that, like misting the dew up, so it carries your intention with it?
Yeah, I mean the dew is a very powerful stuff as well. I believe there's a lot of stored energy in dew. I don't know if anyone else has had any experiences with that. I've listened to Dan Winters chatting about dew and the energies that are it's like highly charged stuff.
I think for today we
I've heard that there's a
do
salt
have
in
to
dew that
go,
you
and we
collect.
can
Like
bring
if
it
you
up
were in a
another. We can
survival
bring it up
situation, there's
another.
a way to collect the salt from dew that'll
Sorry.
keep you going. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never done any more research into it, but I know there's something special about dew. The more I need to know about it, I haven't learned about it yet.
I think we do need to go for today, and we can bring up dew another day, perhaps, because it is an interesting topic that we probably should spend more time with, as the ancients have. So I think we should end it for now, because otherwise we have a new stream we have to reinitiate and so on here. So
great. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It was and thanks for giving me the opportunity to go over there to Dominica and do my thing and help where I can. And thanks for all the love and the support. It was, as I say, we felt it. So much love to you all. Thanks a lot. There's a lot of people contacted me that I haven't had a chance to get back in touch with. I'm a little bit snowed under with on my messenger and stuff, but just thanks a lot for all the help and the support. And thanks, Carolina and Mr. Kesh, for giving me the opportunity to go out there and do my thing.
Well, thank you for the wonderful debriefing here today, Tom. It was great to dive into some of the details on what we're talking about. So
yeah, thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Okay, anything else, Caroline, or anything else from anyone else before we go here?
Not really. Thank you, Rick. I know you have 5 minutes left to close down. So if we can go out with the nice music and say goodbye to everybody.
Yes,
I
indeed.
thank the team. I thank all the people which were present. And it was a beautiful experience. Thank you.
Okay, yes, and thank you, everybody. It's been the 21st One Nation, One Planet, One Race for World Peace for Tuesday, December 12th, 2017. And I think Flint has something ready for us to go out on here. Do you want to take it away, Flint? Thank you very much.
Yo.
Salas.